Their military training camp. Behind me are local residents, people from all over the country. Shabana Mahmood has said that this is an effective way of getting rid of those expensive, flashy asylum hotels. But unfortunately, these people are still placed within the community.
No streets! No streets!
Whole town is very afraid because these are unvetted men from countries that are, the government warn us not to go to. I've got an 18-year-old daughter and she gets the bus opposite camp.
Do you feel safe for her?
No, so that will have to stop. Right. We'll either have to wait with her or take her to wherever she needs to go.
The reason I'm here today is because I live in Crowborough and my family, I've got a wife and children, and just worried about, my wife walking to work and my sons, walking about. Anything can happen, kind of that nowadays, Nigel, what's going on, what's happening in this country. So I'm just concerned and frightened,
There was support from other towns, other communities, because of course Shabana Mahmood has threatened other communities, and she said they're going to open site after site after site. Well, I would hope that if she's going to try and do that, she learns some lessons about the way she's done it in Crowborough, because this is not finished. We are not finished objecting to this plan.
Crowborough says no! Crowborough says no! Crowborough says no!
We would urge her to reconsider, and whatever she does, she needs to talk to the people that she's imposing these things on.
You had a direct line to Keir Starmer and Shabana Mahmood. What would you say to them?
Look after your most vulnerable first. It's your priority to look after your vulnerable.
If they're bringing illegal immigrants into a camp in the dead of night, why are they doing that? They're doing that because it's disingenuous, it's dishonest, it's covert, and they're trying to keep the reality away from the local community of what they're actually doing to us. We've now got to the end of the entrance to the camp, we've got cameras, we've got police drones. It's like a cloud that's come over this community.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. For the next 3 hours, we're going to talk about the big stories that matter to you. I want your views on all of that. And one of the stories that so much of the media is absolutely ignoring at the moment is what is going on the streets of London. I'm not talking about the weekly pro-Palestinian protests. We know about those, but there's a big element of pro-Iran protests in that. There's people doing Nazi salutes. There's people talking about globalising the Intifada. There are people talking about the leader, Ali Khamenei, on the streets of London, praising him and saying that the Islamist way of life is one that they espouse. They're often wearing masks, they're not being arrested, they're shouting things and they're advocating things that are completely against our way of life. So much of the media completely ignoring this story, as is always the case here on Talk. We will talk about what is actually happening in this country. We'll bring you someone who was there, we'll bring you great commentary on it, we'll do it from the policing angle as well. There's some other great stories around today that so many people are not talking about. A horrible story in London, another story in London about daylight robbery. Robert Jenrick's been talking about that. We'll talk about a Tower Hamlets councillor running for election 5,000 miles from London. This is someone who takes tens of thousands of your taxpayers' money to be a councillor in London who is running for office elsewhere. A former terrorist who praised jihad as a compassionate act, set to be a UK councillor. So many people just not talking about this stuff. We'll talk about Andrew, we'll talk about Peter Mandelson, we'll talk about Angela Rayner and her leadership ambitions. Of course we will. Those are in the news too, and we'll talk about that too. But what we're going to talk about mainly today are the stories that other media are completely ignoring. Why are they ignoring them? Well, you can draw your own conclusions from that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, send me a voice note. Loads of people do that, and we'll get as many of those on the air as we can. The way to do that is through WhatsApp, less than a minute, make your point, and we'll play out as many of those as we can between now and 1 o'clock. You can send me a WhatsApp text message too. You can give me a ring, 0344 499 1000. So many ways to get in contact, so many things to say between now and 1 o'clock. So stay with us here on Talk. We'll also talk to the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp. We'll get his opinion on what's going on, including what's happening on the streets of London. And because so much of the media simply won't tell you about this, won't have covered it, won't have looked at all the things that I've been sent, the things that I've seen, the people I've been speaking to. Last night I was up quite late. There were loads of viewers and listeners sending me lots of stuff on Twitter. We're going to speak to someone who's an observer and is a campaigner, actually an activist, who has been taking lots of videos of that. We'll talk to her a little bit later on in the programme. But I just want to show you a few clips of what's happening. I'll narrate them for people who are on the radio, who are listening on the radio. So this is the police attempting to struggle with these people on the streets. That looks like someone they're arresting there. There are so many people who have been chanting various things, not just about Palestine, but also about Iran and Iranian flags of the regime on the streets of London. You can see some of the police action that's happening there, trying to arrest various people. This is a very, very difficult thing. The Intifada chanter arrest, sparking anger at the pro-Palestinian march. But it's not just about that. It's about Iran as well. It's about people holding up pictures of the Supreme Leader of Iran as well, Ayatollah Khamenei. I think we have some other footage as well that we can play, some other footage of some of those protests. There was a Nazi salute as well, if we can play that and see what's happening. Yes, there's someone doing what looks like a Nazi salute, people holding pictures and banners of Ayatollah Khamenei, people in keffiyehs, the Palestinian flag and the Iranian flag on display there. Loads of people there who simply do not believe in our way of life, espousing what the leader of Iran wants. And the point of this is that a lot of these people who go on these marches say they're for human rights. A lot of people who go on these marches say they're for freeing people, making sure people have their rights and their freedoms. Well, actually, in Iran, what at least some of these protesters are doing is espousing a repressive regime that subjugates women, that arrests people, that kills people, that takes protesters off the streets simply for protesting. The kind of freedoms that they enjoy that are not enjoyed by ordinary people in Iran. We'll talk about President Trump a little bit later on as well, in terms of what he wants to do with Iran. But let's go to the debate desk now. Phil Dave, broadcaster and talk presenter, and Elliot Keck, who's head of campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance. It's lovely to have you both in the studio this morning on the debate desk. Phil, what's your thought on this? And of course the fact that so much of the media are not covering it. I have learned so much more through Twitter, through people sending me things, through activists talking to me about what's actually happening on the streets of our capital city.
Yeah, I would suggest that sort of the silence from the other news outlets is completely deafening. It's unbearable, actually. So when you consider how obsessed they have been in years gone by with these protests that take place on a near weekly basis, this is a bit more than that, as you rightly identified before. This is not just one of your small gatherings. This was actually proper organised. I actually saw on social media some of the campaigning for it to make as many people as possible turn up in central London yesterday to take part in this. And what's really important is I've been prattling on now for goodness only knows how long at who is behind all of this and actually how they fund these particular protests. I've said all along it is with Iranian money. And yesterday, I am so pleased yesterday's protest happened because finally it actually proved what I have been saying for so long. And so many others, not just me, so many others have been crying out about this as well. All those who think that they're going on some sort of peaceful protest in the name of humanity.
And how can people talk about humanity, civil rights, human rights, when they're holding a picture, at least some of the people on that march, are holding pictures of Ali Khamenei, who is responsible for repressing human rights, repressing freedom of speech, repressing people who simply want freedom and the kind of freedom. And this station would not exist in Iran. The three of us would not be allowed to say what we're saying this morning.
The three of us wouldn't be alive if we were in Iran. Let's be really really clear about that. I would suggest that all you have to look at is the way that Iran has killed probably as many protesters in the last couple of weeks as Israel has been very careful not to kill in the Gaza Strip over the last 2.5 years of the war there.
We have seen some deaths over the last 48 hours, of course, perpetrated by Israel in Gaza.
Indeed, but still doesn't take the total anywhere near. I'm not saying any death is right, don't get me wrong, but the difference being is that it actually demonstrates just how careful the IDF truly are not to cause death, whereas you look at what's happened in Iran, they're not even subtle about it. They have slaughtered tens of thousands of protesters who do not agree with the Ayatollah, and as a result of it, the media, why? Silent? Oh yeah, because it doesn't suit the narrative.
Elliot, what do you make of all of this?
Yeah, I mean, Phil's right. The truth is we don't know how many people are dead in Iran. We have very, very little access to information, but what's clear is it probably is in the tens of thousands. We know that Iranian soldiers, Iranian police simply opened fire with live ammunition on crowds of protesters, including peaceful protesters. You really have to circle in on what's happening in London, and it's a fantastic visual representation of just how extreme a significant part of our population, and in particular a significant part of the British Muslim population, are when you think that there were hundreds of thousands of peaceful, liberal-minded Iranians out on the streets of Tehran and across Iran, and yet here we have
and they're not being supported. They're not being supported by people in this country.
And here we have thousands, if not tens of thousands, of British Muslims and others out on our streets, not supporting the Iranians, but actually supporting the murderous regime, and in particular supporting this global Islamic network that calls for
flying their flag as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally yesterday, flying the Iranian regime flag. We've seen Iranian flags fly in London in the past few weeks, but those are actually the true Iranian flag. The one, the difference,
sun in the middle.
Exactly. So the one to explain, the one with the lion, the sun in the middle of it, is the true Iranian flag. The one that has some sort of Arabic symbol in the middle of it with red writing going across it is the flag of the regime. And that is what we were seeing flown in central London yesterday. It's absolutely unbelievable. This is the flag that epitomises and symbolises the very breach of human rights that these lefty lunatics are banging on about every single week that we allegedly see in Gaza.
We're gonna talk about a couple of other stories just a little bit later on with you on the debate desk about the Tower Hamlets councillor running for election 5,000 miles from London. We're going to talk about the ex-terrorist who praised jihad as a compassionate act, who's set to be a UK councillor. Islamism is a huge problem. It's being ignored because it doesn't fit the narrative. Iran hates Israel. So much of the media is very, very sceptical and antipathetic towards Israel. No Jews, no news. And the fact is we have this protest. It's a different type of protest. We've had the pro-Palestinian protests, which are horrendous, for years. Now it's taken on a very, very different character, Elliot, hasn't it? And what should the government do about this, especially as it still hasn't even prescribed the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard?
Yeah, the IRGC very obviously needs to be prescribed. Should have been done many, many years ago. It's a shame the last Conservative government didn't do that. They had many, many opportunities. The Labour government could right that wrong. But listen, I mean, something needs to be done about this progressive Islamist alliance. You saw Peter Cardwell out on the streets of London allegedly holding a sign saying globalise the Intifada. Now, we have seen the Intifada be globalised. Globalising the Intifada means dozens of Jews being massacred in Bondi.
You're absolutely right.
Jews being massacred in Manchester. That is what globalising the Intifada looks like.
He says he was calling for peaceful action and peaceful globalisation of the Intifada. I think that's absurd. He has been arrested.
He's not that stupid.
Can I just make it really clear, actually? I think we've got to be really careful because everyone falls into this trap, of saying that somehow the Intifada will only affect Jewish people. No, the Jews are the first target. This is really, really important to stress this. People understandably say, well, this isn't our problem, why do we go on about this? It's very simple, it's everyone's problem. Because the truth is, those who truly believe in the Intifada, those who actually know what it means, unlike allegedly Peter Cardwell, who says he doesn't know what it means, but those who actually know what globalise the Intifada means, it means turn the world to fundamentalist Islam. That is what they're talking about. And anyone who doesn't agree with that, by the way, regardless of religion, whether they are Jewish, Christian, Hindu, or indeed peaceful Muslims, will all be the target of death to make way for it. So please don't be fooled for it. Just because the Jews are the first target, don't think they won't come for the rest afterwards.
This is just in London, but I can see it going to the rest of the country from what we saw yesterday. There are so many other aspects to this. And we know in Birmingham, for example, this ex-terrorist who praised jihad as a compassionate act, set to be a UK councillor. We have 4 pro-Gaza MPs in Parliament. We have others who have sympathies towards that way of thinking, like Jeremy Corbyn, for example. This is growing, Elliot. This is a growing thing, and there just doesn't seem to be a huge amount that's being done about it.
Well, yeah, we have a significantly growing Muslim population, and unfortunately it does seem that we have picked, in many cases, the worst of the Muslim world, the most extreme elements from, in particular, the Middle East, but also in particular South Asia and parts of Pakistan, where we seem to have brought in some of the most extreme elements of the global Islamic community. That is extremely frustrating. It's not entirely clear what we do about that. Once people have citizenship, lots of these people are British born with British citizenship. Obviously, any talk of deportation is impossible because we are talking about British citizens, and we have to accept that these are now a part of our social fabric, even if a pretty appalling one. Now, I mean, we can take much clearer and firmer line on criminal penalties, but then you get into whole arguments about freedom of speech issues, and this is what Peter Tatchell's argument is, that this is just freedom of speech, and there is a case that you should have the freedom to say horrible, appalling things.
There's actually a very simple solution to this. People find this quite baffling to say that it's simple when clearly at surface value it doesn't appear to be. Treason laws is what is needed here. You actually reintroduce the idea of treason laws that state that if you say anything that is detrimental to the safety and the well-being of not only British values but Britain as a country, then you legally lose your right to be here. Now,
could that not be extended in lots of different ways, depending on who's in power, to affect, for example, this conversation? A number of people won't like this conversation.
The difference is, of course, though, that if you sort of say that treason laws are what goes against the country as a whole and the safety of British people as a whole, as an entity, then I would say that the conversations that we have on Talk, and even those who are accused of being on the far right, very rarely would they actually have conversations that could be detrimental or indeed dangerous to British citizens and indeed British values.
Okay. What do you think about what Elliot and Phil and I have been saying? I'd love to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. You can use the break we're about to take to pick up the phone, to give me a ring, or to send me a voice note and let me know what you think about this conversation. There is nowhere else on the media that this conversation is taking place at this exact moment. It's here, it's on Talk, and I want you to be part of the conversation. 0344 499 1000. Thank you to James, who says, if anyone had any doubt about these protests being funded by hostile actors, the fact they're pro-Iran protests should remove any doubt. John in Kent says, why shock or surprise over these latest protests? Most of this has been imported by different governments and the metropolitan elites. For 2 years, these groups have got stronger and more brazen, while the media and commentators say, how terrible, but I respect their free speech. These people are the enemy of our country. Mark in Norfolk, these hateful Islamists supporting marches on our streets will not end until we limit the rights of first and second generation immigrants. Just as previous generations leave property, money and other assets to their children and grandchildren, so immigrants should work and earn their descendants' right to both vote and stand in elections. I'm not sure I entirely agree with that, Mark, to be honest, but thank you for the point. Davy Rees in West Kirby in the Wirral says, hi Peter, with reference to the above, typical coppers turning a blind eye to all of this. In fairness, there were arrests made yesterday. The police did appear to be doing their job to some degree, but that is a big debate that absolutely will continue on this station. Clayton in Dartford, is there any wonder why people now refer to London as Londonistan? This country is lost. And final one before the break is from Craig in Lincoln, who says, unless the government gets to grips with all these protests about Intifada and the Palestinian state, etc., which they won't, the country will head into civil war. I don't know when, but it will. Well, let's hope that doesn't happen. What we do know is that things are out of control. How do we take back our streets? How do we take back our British values? Let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
really shone a light.
Hello and welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCown.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle from Suits, that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who has been in touch. David in Canterbury says, you speak of treason. Treason never prospers. What's the reason? When treason prospers, no one dares call it treason, said John Pym in 1641. David, I'm always up for a classical quote, and thank you for that. Mark in Norfolk says, hateful Islamists supporting marches on our streets won't end. Oh, I've read that out. David says, it's clear why this government and the Greens ignore this call for intifada is because they would rather have the votes from Muslims than protect the wider population of the UK. We have less than a generation to save this country. Thank you to Mary in County Down, who says, these Islamists on our streets, whether British or foreign born, are aided by their useful idiots, white British middle class people. The guilty white enablers carrying regime flags and placards with a photo of Khamenei. Also, where did all those identical regime flags and Khamenei placards come from yesterday? Clearly mass produced and distributed to the people as they arrived for the march. Who funded and organised that? This isn't just about Muslims, is it? This is about other enablers too, Phil Dave.
Well, I put it to you that this is a really important point, and it's one of the reasons why I think this problem has never been sorted sooner, is this lack of distinction between Islamism and Muslims, because these cowards hide behind Islam. Now, most people know someone who's Muslim, and most people know that that individual who is Muslim is actually British, peace-loving, just wants to get on with their life, and absolutely doesn't want to see the end of the world in quite the way the Islamists do. But the Islamists know that, and as a result of it, they hide behind them. So until we start offering this absolute distinction between those who are Muslim and those who are Islamists, this is only going to get worse. We have to be willing to call out an Islamist as they are. They're an invader to this country. They're not welcome here. And as far as I'm concerned, the sooner we get rid of Islamists from the UK, the better.
Elliot, I want to ask you about this story that has been around for a couple of days, but more detail today. The convicted terrorist standing as a counsellor who has praised jihad as a compassionate act, despite claiming he's turned his back on extremism. This is Shahid Butt, who will be an independent candidate in Birmingham May's local election, told Muslims not to take Jews and Christians as friends. 91% ethnic minority population, 70% of whom practice Islam. Again, we are absolutely 100% not getting at peaceful Muslims. There are loads of them in the country. I don't want to do the whole, some of my best friends are Muslims, but actually that is the case. But this particular person is in a situation where he should be nowhere near our country, never mind our democracy. What do you think?
Yeah, he has a very interesting history, doesn't he? He was arrested after allegations that he was involved in terrorist plots in Yemen in the 90s and been involved in a whole range of other dodgy dealings. I mean, he claimed to have reformed himself during the noughties and 2010s and claimed to have worked hard to stop British Muslims travelling to the Middle East, and yet some of his more recent utterances suggest that that may not be the case. Now, one of the concerning things that that your viewers might be flashing out is the reason why some of these extremist ideas coming more to the fore, because he's standing to be a councillor in an area with, Sparkhill and Birmingham, which has particular problems with radicalisation, and it's possible he's playing to constituency. But it certainly suggests that we're not getting the best and brightest running for local government. It certainly suggests that we're not getting the most noble and most committed to British values. You see similar problems in Tower Hamlets in particular.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in just a second, but just to let you know, this morning, Zach Polanski, who's the leader of the Green Party, has said he'll be absolutely going for a parliamentary seat in London. He hasn't said he's standing, well, he isn't standing, it's someone else, actually, who is standing, Hannah Spencer, in the Gorton and Denton by-election. But he said, Zach Polanski, that he lives in London. I'm a Mancunian, I've been in London for 20 years, and the Green Party really believes in nurturing local talent and lifting up someone from the community. When a seat comes up in London, I'll absolutely be going for it. Speaking of London, Tower Hamlets councillor running for election 5,000 miles from London, so £20,000 from the taxpayer, despite campaigning for political office in Bangladesh. Sabina Khan seeking to represent the Bangladesh National Party in the National Assembly elections in February. Yes, she continues to serve, we use the term loosely, Tower Hamlets in East London as a councillor, earning £20,600 a year. She is the scrutiny lead for resources, a position that requires her to examine the council's decision making. Now, she's not standing for re-election again in May, but she's still taking the cash, Phil.
Well, I was going to say, it's basically the same as if you, say, have a job and you decide that you're going to run another business whilst being paid to do that job. She's got no hesitation with taking the cash from the council in Tower Hamlets, but at the same time is apparently sort of serving her other interests, standing as some sort of politician 5,000 miles away. Look, clearly this should not be allowed. Now, I'm not suggesting for a second that this individual shouldn't be allowed to run as a politician in another country. Of course you should do whatever the heck you want, that's fine. But stand down your position as a councillor when clearly you do not have your local council's best interests at heart if all you're going to do is beggar off to another country to serve as a politician there.
Yeah, I mean, Tower Hamlets is notorious for this stuff, right? I mean, Upsana Begum, the local MP, is in a council house, still lives in a council house, despite earning about £94,000 a year. The leader of the council, Luftar Rahman, was disqualified from office for electoral fraud a number of years ago. That suspension, unfortunately, coming to an end in 2021. There seems to be a particular problem with politicians in the Tower Hamlets area choosing to fleece residents and fleece taxpayers over serving their local communities.
We're going to talk to the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp in a few minutes' time. We'll continue on the debate desk with Phil Dave, the broadcaster and talk presenter, and Elliot Keck, who's head of campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance. Loads to talk about. We haven't even touched Andrew and Angela Rayner either. Lorraine's been in touch and says this Iranian protest was grotesque, but what do we expect? With a Prime Minister who refuses to prescribe the IRGC, recognise Palestine as a state, and by doing so embolden Hamas and prolong the hostage suffering, failed to stop a Jewish ban in Birmingham, a ban on Christian March in Tower Hamlets, created two-tier policing and a criminal system that has consistently failed to protect our Jewish community. The man is a disgrace, and these protests have no place in our once great country. Lorraine, thank you for that. Helen in Yorkshire, thank you for continuing to talk about Iran. There are rallies today in London, Sheffield, Glasgow and Manchester. Thank you also for raising the horror of the fundamental Iran. Most people have no idea what fundamentalist Islam entails and how it would affect all our lives. Helen, that is a really nice message and I really appreciate that. But it's sad that you feel you have to send it. I'm not criticising you in the slightest. In fact, I'm thanking you for doing so. But what does it say about our society? What does it say about our media? That when you're just calling out things, when you're pointing out things that are wrong, stuff that shouldn't happen, stuff that is morally wrong, that is the issue that is that is being raised. It's very, very interesting, and thank you, Helen. I appreciate that. Phil says, I think you should rename the station Twaddle TV. My partner listens to it, but I think you talk a load of rubbish, says Phil. Well, Phil, your partner has great taste in her listening habits. I'll not go any further on that one. Amanda says, regarding Andrew, we are living in interesting times. We have a far-left bordering communist government who detest the monarchy, and the relentless hounding of Andrew has now reached fever point. At the same time, we have Islamist-supported marches allowed in our streets. Both these topics, I have no doubt, are connected to a master plan of great changes in our country, says Amanda. Lots of people are getting in touch. We're going to take some more of your comments and your voice notes as well. There's so much more to discuss before we speak to Chris Philp, who is the Shadow Home Secretary. We're on the debate desk with Phil Dave and Elliot Keck. Stay with us here on Talk.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I am slightly struggling to keep up with the tweets that have come in. I will make sure we get into more of those in the next break when I have a chance to have a look at them. I know Phil Dave, who's on the debate desk, wanted to respond to something I think Lorraine has said in her message a second ago.
Yeah, so earlier you heard the message that you read out from Lorraine was saying about sort of we've seen government that successfully and continuously failed to protect the Jewish community of this country. I actually want to go one step further and say that this is actually part of the problem, is all of this division is the reason why this hatred is allowed to rise to the surface, because the one thing that the haters are united in is what they stand for and what they despise, and that is clearly Western values. So I believe the rest of us who are left in the West, rather than actually looking for division, we need to come together. So I'd go as far as to say the police and the government have successfully managed to fail to protect Western values and British citizens. That's what we should be focusing on. I understand why she says Jewish people, but I think it's much worse than that.
I think Lorraine made the first bit of the point, you've made the second bit of the point very, very well. We're going to talk about other stories in the news in just a second. I just want to play a couple of voice notes that have come in. This first one from Nick on the Iranian protests.
Morning, Peter. It's Nick from Loughborough. Of course, the mainstream media aren't reporting on the people, the pro-Iranians, the pro-Khomeinis, the pro-Islamist. They're not reporting on those demonstrations because the only conclusion that any right-minded person or commentator can reach is that these people should clear off back to where they came from. And to suggest such a thing is totally against the narrative of the liberal media. Peter, good to see you. Have a good day.
Nick, thank you. You always speak such absolute common sense. I love your voice messages. I love that you send them in, and I really appreciate them. I also appreciate the one from John, who has sent in one on migration. This is what he says.
65,000 people come into the country illegally with no passports, and then we're surprised this is happening on our streets. Unbelievable.
Thank you very much. We will absolutely continue to talk about this story. If you have views on it, you let me know. 0344 499 1000. I will absolutely be talking to the Shadow Home Secretary about it, Chris Philp, when he comes on the line in a few minutes' time. But there are two other huge stories around today that I want to talk about on the debate desk with Phil Dave, broadcaster and talk presenter, and Elliot Keck, who's head of campaigns for the Taxpayers Alliance. One of them is the revelations about Jeffrey Epstein, the emails that have come out, and Steve Reid, who is the local government secretary, community secretary. He's been on Sky News this morning talking about this in regard to Peter Mandelson as well. This is what Steve Reid has said.
You're asking me here about something that happened nearly 20 years ago. I don't know the full detail of it. I wasn't in government 20 years ago.
But he himself has said he acknowledges that that money did go to his partner.
That's right. I don't know whether he declared it or not, and he should have done. The declaration rules have been brought in by then, so I think it would be for Peter Mandelson to explain whether or not that money was properly declared, and if not, then he will need to account for that. But I don't want to jump the gun and make assumptions. I think we need to find out exactly what happened first.
More questions for Peter Mandelson. Of course, it was Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, who made him ambassador to the United States, despite knowing his relationship, or at least some of his relationship, with Jeffrey Epstein. Elliot, I know you've been following the story quite closely. What are your thoughts?
I mean, this is pretty grotesque, isn't it? The whole thing, every new allegation, every new leak, every new picture just paints a further sordid, depraved picture of Epstein and his associates, and it's pretty appalling that one of our most senior politicians, one of the architects of the New Labour movement, and of course most recently the UK's ambassador to the United States, seemed to have been such a core part of Jeffrey Epstein's life, such a close friend, and it's all pretty nauseating, and I think, you know, further action should be looked at with Peter Mandelson as to whether or not he should remain a peer in the House of Lords.
Phil?
Yeah, well, look, there's clearly something, I think this is going to be the understatement of the day here, you ready for this? There's clearly something very dodgy going on, right? We know that. But here is my problem, is that when we start getting drip-fed information on these huge trials, And of course, this is just one example, but the other that springs to mind as well is all of the scandal that surrounded Jimmy Savile back in the day, is that unfortunately people start painting their own picture. And as we're drip-fed information without knowing categorically what went on, how is it ever going to be possible that these individuals can truly be brought to justice? Because you're never going to find people in the land who will be completely unbiased when a trial comes to pass. And that's even if indeed it does come to pass. So I have a pretty major issue when we start getting these bits of information and we allow the general public to start making up their own mind without knowing all the facts. Without a shadow of a doubt, I'll say it again, something dodgy is going on.
Well, the thing is, we know about some of the dodginess. The problem is that we're getting data out there, but it's not being put together. There these big information dumps. I think it's good. I think it's good that there's transparency there, or at least some level of transparency. The problem is that we will have, as we had yesterday, a guest who said, look, this was all 25 years ago, some of these people are dead, how will we ever get justice? You know, Virginia Giuffre, very sadly, is dead, Jeffrey Epstein is dead, which is not sad. We've lots of other issues with this and things we will never know. Now we have the Prime Minister saying that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, whatever we call him these days, he should go to America to testify. I think the Clintons should also testify. They've been asked to testify by Congress and have said no. We'll never get the full truth of this, but we should get some truth and some justice, Elliot.
Yeah, I mean, listen, on the point of justice, it's worth saying that there's lots of really immoral, twisted behaviour that isn't illegal. But nevertheless, for public figures, if that information comes to light, there's nothing wrong with someone's reputation being in the toilet, even if they've never been convicted in a court of law. On Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, I have to say I think it's a little bit beneath the Prime Minister to be talking about this.
Why?
We are now talking about someone who is a private individual. Yes, when he was a prince.
Why is it beneath him?
Absolutely fine. Because he is now a private individual. And that's not to say that what he did, you know, clearly he's done some pretty sick and twisted things, but the Prime Minister...
He denies all the allegations against him. But why is it beneath the Prime Minister?
Yes, so
why is it beneath the Prime Minister to say that he should give evidence? I mean, the Clintons are private individuals these days.
Well, I mean, again, I don't think that Donald Trump should necessarily be commenting on what the Clintons as private individuals should be doing, because it's beneath the office. We are now talking about private individuals. Yes, I mean,
so what? We talk about private individuals all the time, Elliot.
Yeah, we do, but the Prime Minister, someone in number 10, someone who is dealing with the most important of the issues
these people are not just private individuals. These are not just members of the public. He's not singling out, you know, Brenda from Bristol. He's talking about people who, in this case, have been, you know, he has shown catastrophic misjudgment when it's come to appointing Peter Mandelson. And he's talking about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. I mean, he's not exactly a private individual per se.
I personally would like to see Andrew Mountbatten Windsor face every single allegation against him in Congress. I'm just saying that Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the country, we can't have it both ways, right? We can't say Andrew is now just a private citizen, he's been stripped of everything.
I'm not saying that.
Well, I mean, in general, people, and certainly the Prime Minister advocating for all those titles to be stripped, and then say the Prime Minister should still be opining on what, you know, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor as a private individual.
The Prime Minister going to opine on anything the Prime Minister wants to.
So no, I think that sort of, Elliot, I get what you're saying, if I'm honest with you, and I sort of slightly agree but I slightly disagree, so let me explain where I'm coming from. Is that I don't want the Prime Minister of this country, when we have got such a slew of problems facing us, don't want him to focus in and chime in on one particular issue. Yes, there's no doubt about it, there's something going on here that needs investigating. I would argue that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and the Clintons are anything but private. They may be trying to carry on with their lives, but they're still very public figures, even if they're not making the headlines every single day. But what I absolutely agree with is that I think that this is one particular individual. I believe that Keir Starmer, although I'm sure he would deny this, would hone in on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, because clearly he, like so many of his Labour cronies, probably doesn't like the royal family very much.
Well, he may well just have been asked about it, but yes, he's on record previously. Anyway, he did accept an eye-toot. My question is, why is Peter Mandelson not being put under pressure from the government to assist the US investigations and testify? Why is he being allowed once again to slip away quietly?
Well, because he's not a member of the royal family, is he? So there you go.
Yeah, and that's an important point. I mean, Labour have, and the Prime Minister in particular, has a far greater duty to place pressure on Lord Mandelson, someone who remains in the Labour Party, someone who remains a Labour peer, and someone who was appointed by Keir Starmer as for essentially our most important diplomatic post that exists. He has a lot greater duty to be placing pressure on him than on Andrew, who ultimately, as I said, has been completely stripped of his titles and over whom, you know, Keir Starmer now no longer has any sort of duty to pressure.
Do you think it could, unless I'm just putting us out there, I have no proof of this whatsoever, but I do wonder.
Never stopped me in the past.
We know full well that Keir Starmer is absolutely brilliant at sort of saying something without actually saying something, because that's just typical politician, not to mention typical lawyer status or barrister status. I wonder if he actually put Mandelson in that position, knowing full well he would have to travel to America, and then if the authorities in America caught up with him, that's not Starmer's fault.
That's not what happened. That's just not what happened.
Just putting it out there.
Lord Mandelson is a brilliant political operator. Absolutely nobody's in any doubt about that, and he was clearly a highly effective UK ambassador to the United States, and Starmer thought it was worth selling out moral principles for the sake of getting a good ambassador. And
I believe that to be more the
have
case,
to make.
but who knows?
Okay. Everybody needs a bit more Phil Dave in their life, and if you want more of him in your life, Phil's new show Down the Local is on Talk's YouTube channel right now.
People say, no smoking, including the use of e-cigarettes. I'm like, who has died from secondhand water vapour? Like, that is a good way that you could just let people vape inside and there won't be a problem.
No, I don't know I'm saying you, right, okay, but if you're going to smoke, for God's sake, have a proper cigarette. Puffing away on something like a baby's dummy is just embarrassing. And then you walk down the street and, like, there's this cloud of watermelon bloody mist. It's like, what are you, 7? Grow up, buy a packet of 20 and crack on.
That is Phil Dave's Down the Local on Talk, a YouTube channel now. We're going to talk to the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, who will be with us in just a second. Stay with us here on Talk.
Brand new for 2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's speak now to the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, for the Conservatives, who's with us. Chris, good morning.
Good morning, Peter.
Chris, I am very worried, as are a lot of our viewers and listeners, about what's happening on the streets of London and other cities as well, not just in regard to pro-Palestinian protests, but pro-Iran protests. There's a lot about it on social media. A lot of the other media, more traditional media, not doing a huge amount about it. We're talking a lot about it this morning. You're seeing people with Khamenei banners, you're seeing people with Iranian regime flags, you're talking about globalising the Intifada. We're seeing some arrests, but it's clearly out of control. How do we take back our streets, Chris?
Well, first of all, I agree that protesting in support of the Iranian regime is extremely alarming and concerning. It is an extremist regime. It supports terrorism around the world. It supported Hamas in their appalling attacks on October the 7th, when over 1,000 innocent civilians were murdered, raped and kidnapped by Hamas with Iran's express support. And of course, the Iranian regime not only persecutes women, but they also now murder their own citizens when their own citizens in Iran protest against the Islamist regime of the Ayatollahs. So it's an appalling government, and the fact that significant numbers of people in the UK seem to think it's okay to demonstrate in support of that awful regime is frankly sickening. In terms of what we can do about it, well, there are obviously laws around what you can and can't say. I would argue that calling for intifada and jihad are calls for violence and calls for essentially inciting violence against Jewish people in Israel in particular, in a way that I think contravenes Section 3 of the Public Order Act 1986, which covers stirring up racial hatred. And I would expect the police to intervene and make arrests where protesters call for things like intifada and jihad. There is no place on our streets in this country for protesters essentially calling for acts of violence.
But the problem is, I mean, I wish that were true. There is a place, because it's been allowed to develop. We have the IRGC, which isn't prescribed. Your government didn't prescribe it for 14 years. This government hasn't prescribed it yet. The Muslim Brotherhood isn't prescribed. And I'm not against people peacefully protesting, but the police and the Home Office need to do so much more with this, Chris.
Well, I agree. I mean, the police, I think, should be taking a much tougher line and arresting people who call for violence. I know it doesn't always happen, but it should. The laws are there, and the police should apply them. The police are quick enough to arrest people like Lucy Connolly, for example, for putting up a Facebook post for 33 minutes or something. They should certainly be arresting those expressly calling for violence. The police need to up their game in relation to that. And I'd go further and say that people who are not British citizens who express support for extremism or terrorism or who express anti-Semitic or generally racist views should have their visas revoked and should be deported. And that would send a very clear message, in my view, that these kind of views are not welcome here. The Home Secretary today has the power to do that, but Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, doesn't seem willing to use that power where people who are not British citizens pop up expressing these abhorrent views.
Tell me your thoughts on the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. This is something where there have been a lot more details about Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and about the former ambassador to America, Peter Mandelson. Why is it, do you think, that Peter Mandelson is not being put under pressure from the government to assist the US investigation and testify? Why is he being allowed once again to slip quietly away?
Well, exactly. So Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor should definitely be testifying before that congressional inquiry, in my view. I agree with Keir Starmer about that, but so should Peter Mandelson. Peter Mandelson should be testifying as well. He should be getting questioned by that congressional inquiry. As I understand it, Peter Mandelson's partner received about £10,000 from Epstein after Epstein's conviction, and Mandelson clearly had a very close relationship with Epstein in the same way that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor did as well. So Mandelson should be testifying, and the Labour Party should be making clear that if Mandelson returns ever to the House of Lords, he will not receive the Labour whip. That is something that Keir Starmer could say right now, but he has been suspiciously silent on that topic when it comes to Mandelson.
Clearly, Labour is in flux at the moment. We're reading about Angela Rayner having a £1 million war chest to perhaps challenge Keir Starmer. But your party's in flux as well. You've had yet more defections to Reform UK. Can you and Kemi Badenoch steady the ship, or are you worried about more defections? And I wonder more broadly what you think it actually means to be a Conservative anymore when Reform UK seem to be stealing your clothes on that matter.
Well, firstly, it's been 4 people out of 120-odd MPs, so we should keep that number in perspective. And in the case of Robert Jenrick specifically, he did it because he was suffering from frustrated personal ambition, because he wanted to become leader and he wanted to replace Kemi Badenoch, and he realised that he couldn't do that. So I think we all know why Robert changed sides in the way.
Not what he says, but you're entitled to your view.
I think we can all see the facts, can't we? Now, in terms of the polling, I think you'll have seen in the last 2 or 3 months the Conservatives edging up in the polling.
Ever so slightly. I mean, 20% or so.
Sure, look, I don't want to overstate it, but the gap between us is closing, which is interesting. And when you poll people on who would make the best Prime Minister, which come a general election is one of the key questions, Kemi Badenoch beats Nigel Farage, and she also beats Keir Starmer as well. And look, there are real philosophical differences between Reform and the Conservatives, and practical differences. So practically, when it comes to immigration and our plan to leave the ECHR and make sure illegal immigrants are all deported within a week of arrival, we've done the thinking around that. We've published detailed, credible plans on the ECHR and our borders plan, which I recommend people have a look at. We've done the thinking. We've got credible plans, which Reform don't have. And on other issues, we do fundamentally disagree. For example, Nigel Farage is a fan of Vladimir Putin. He said he admires Putin. And Farage even went so far as to blame Ukraine for getting invaded by Russia, which is a disgraceful and ridiculous thing to say. Reform also support higher welfare spending, including getting rid of the two-child benefit cap so people can have like 10 kids and claim unlimited benefits.
Well, they say that for British-born people in this country.
Well, I mean, they've changed their position. First of all, it was for everybody, and then they've changed their position. But they still,
which they're entitled to do.
Well, yeah, within about... That's a good example of Reform not thinking things through properly. They come up with some policy off the cuff, and then within about 10 minutes it falls apart. But anyway, they do still, even today, support a form of removing the two-child benefit cap, so someone can have 10 kids and get paid for by hard-working taxpayers. We disagree with that. We think welfare spending should be reduced, and the money saved used to fund, amongst other things, tax cuts for people who are actually working. So there are some real differences between us and Reform as well. And as those get, scrutinised over the next 3 years, it won't be a quick process, Peter. It'll take a number of years between here and the election. I think the public will realise that voting Reform will ultimately be a bit of a...
But you're going to do pretty badly in Gorton and Denton, although and Reform UK should do quite well there. Also, Zach Balansky, who is the leader of the Green Party, says he's going for a London seat. Are you worried he might challenge you in Croydon South?
Well, bring it on. I'm confident I'll hold Croydon South. I managed to win Croydon South very much against the odds at the last general election, and I'll be happy to take anyone on at the next election.
Chris, thank you very much. That is Chris Philp there, who is the Shadow Home Secretary. He was been speaking about taking back our streets, about Peter Mandelson, about Angela Rayner, about Reform UK. Quite a lot of things covered in that interview. Elliot Keck, what did you think of what he said?
Well, I mean, listen, particularly interesting on the ideological differences. Obviously, from the Taxpayers Alliance, one of the things we're most concerned about is the size of the national debt, the size of the public spending, and whether or not there's going to be a political party that is going to level with the British public and explain that essentially the services, the state that we've built up is not affordable. It is a house of cards, and it's about to come tumbling down. I do think he has a point. Reform does seem to be leaning more into bigger state, higher welfare, more nationalisation ideology. The Kemi Badenoch team does seem to be moving slightly towards a more smaller state mentality, particularly with some of their reforms on welfare. But I'd like to see some of those divides sharpened if it is the case that the Conservative Party is going to pursue a smaller state approach.
Phil?
I just want to pick up one thing that Chris Philp said there. He said about how Farage blamed Ukraine for being invaded by Russia, and that is not strictly speaking how he put it and true. I mean, I'm always trying to be fair. I'm not a fan of everything that Nigel Farage says, but I think in his defence, in his absence, what he actually said was that the Western world and NATO played a massive part in that, based on the fact that they allowed for the invasion of Crimea without much response to that, and it sort of almost, if you like, fueled that particular fire. So I don't think he was saying per se that Farage actually blamed Ukraine for that. No, I think what was interesting about what Chris was saying towards the start of when you were chatting to him about the protests going on in central London, the pro-Hamas and the pro-Iranian regime protests that went on, he was saying about how that it was terrible, disgusting and all that, but he never categorically said about it should be banned, which sort of rang alarm bells to me, because I would like to think that anyone who is trying to get re-elected into a position of power would turn around and would say that sort of protest would not be allowed on our watch, and he didn't say that, and that I think is quite disconcerting, and that's one of the main reasons why Reform does do so well in the polls, is because they're the ones who are making the noise that so many people want to hear. They're saying how they will ultimately squash a lot of this nonsense.
Just a bit of breaking news, and that's that a major incident has been declared. A fire has broken out at Southampton General Hospital. This was this morning. Earlier on, fire crews called there at 5:30. Patients have been evacuated. Roads surrounding the hospital have been closed by emergency services. The hospital said the fire is now contained. No injuries have been reported. The cause of the blaze not yet known. The hospital said its emergency department diverting patients away unless their condition is deemed life or limb threatening. That is a major incident after fire crews called to Southampton General Hospital early this morning. The hospital has been evacuated. Roads surrounding the hospital closed by emergency services. If there's more on that between now and 1 o'clock, we will of course bring it to you. Lots of people getting in touch. Cliff in Berkshire says, I wonder if Peter Tatchell set out to get arrested. He does seem to be an attention-seeking individual. He reminds me of that kid, you tell him not to touch something and the kid then puts his hands as close to it without touching it, and then when he thinks you're not looking, he quickly touches it. Well, Peter Tatchell has been arrested, not for the first time. I think he's been arrested like 40 times or something. Jane says, actually, I'll read that out later. Keith in Ostrey says, we will all discover who the moderate Muslims are in Sparkhill if Shahid Butt gets elected, but I question how a convicted terrorist is allowed to live in this country, let alone stand for public office. Keith, you should come to Northern Ireland. We've plenty of them in the Northern Ireland Assembly. Bernie says, we lost Birmingham years ago and London is next. Georgina's on the line. Georgina has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000 from London. Georgina, you're speaking to me, but also to Elliot Keck from the Taxpayers Alliance and Phil Dave. What would you like to say?
Well, good morning to all of you. I've been listening to what you've been saying about the radical Islamists in Britain. Now, I'm very, very concerned. We cannot allow Islamic radicalism into our country. It's being allowed.
It's here. It's here.
I know it's here, and this is what's terrifying me, Peter, because it's being allowed by incompetent individuals, these lefty lovies, and our own government, and it's extremely dangerous. This Shakil Afsar, I've watched him on the television a couple of times, and let me tell you, this man is a dangerous man. I saw him on a video a few years ago, and I was horrified because he states categorically that he is not here in this country to take part. He is here to take over, and he says that himself for all to see. So he's not hiding his intent. You know, when
how do we deal with this, Georgina? How do we get some progress made, and how do we take back our streets as well?
Right, well, I'll tell you how you deal with it. We've got to deal with it in a very, very strong manner. We have to have a government that's going to say, listen, we do not have this in our country. If you do not want to accept our culture and our values, our British values, and you do not want to integrate, which, Peter, these people do not want to integrate with our society, then you must leave.
Are there political leaders who'll say that, Georgina?
I don't think anyone's got the testicular fortitude to say that in this government.
Okay.
We need another Margaret Thatcher. We need someone with an iron fist covered in a velvet glove who's not afraid to stand up and say what we need. But this Islamic radicalism, it's like you said, it's already here. I walk around London and it's a swathe of women in these long black burqas. You don't know who they are. You don't know if it's a woman
and I've seen that too, Georgina, absolutely. I just want to get a quick reaction to your comments from Elliot and from Phil, just as we come up to the news on the end of the debate desk. Elliot, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the real difficulty is what you do about, in particular, the protests, in particular, some of the speech being used, because obviously we do want to protect the right to protest. That should be sacrosanct, and same with freedom of speech. But the problem is when you let in and encourage a culture where, with people with so many extreme views, those rights come into conflict, and that's a very dangerous position for a free society to
We'll be talking to Mo Musnaji about that, the writer and commentator, in just a second. Phil, final thought from you?
It's very simple. Georgina hits the nail on the head there, and I suggest that, Georgina, you stand for Parliament if you've got views like that. But I would also point out the main reason that no one does anything about it is because it's all the same. They're all absolutely terrified of causing offence. Well, do you know what? I'm not afraid to cause offence. When I say what I saw yesterday in London was the most sickening spectacular of anti-Britishness or anti-Western I've ever seen in my life, and as far as I'm concerned, they're not even subtle. bin these people out of Britain.
Jane has been in touch, Phil, and says, I adore listening to Phil Dave. Can you ask when he's coming to a pub near me? Although Jane has not said where she is, so we don't know. But Jane, I will pass that on. Phil's new show, Down the Local, is on the Talk YouTube channel now. Thank you to Phil Dave and Elliot Keck, who's head of campaigns for the Taxpayers Alliance, on the debate desk. As I say, we'll be talking to Momus Najmi in a second. He is a writer and commentator, and we'll get his thoughts. Also, Heidi Backram, who's an activist and campaigner. She was down at some of those protests yesterday. Loads more to come, loads more calls, text, tweets and voice notes. We'll talk about that councillor as well, get a policing perspective on what happened yesterday. There's so much coming between now and 1 o'clock, so stay with us here on Talk.
Hello from Crowborough, where the local residents are enraged with what has happened to their community merely overnight, when just 27 single male asylum seeker illegal migrants were bussed into their military training camp. Behind me are local residents, people from all over the country. Shabana Mahmood has said that this is an effective way of getting rid of those expensive, flashy asylum hotels. But unfortunately, these people are still placed within the community.
Whole town is very afraid because these are unvetted men from countries that are, the government warn us not to go to. I've got an 18-year-old daughter and she gets the bus opposite the camp. Do you feel safe for her? No, so that will have to stop. Right. We'll either have to wait with her or take her to wherever she needs to go.
The reason I'm here today is because I live in Crowborough and my family, I've got a wife and children, and just worried about, my wife walking to work and my sons, walking about. Anything can happen, kind of that nowadays and age, all what's going on, what's happening in this country. So I'm just concerned and frightened,
There was support from other towns, other communities, because of course Shabana Mahmood has threatened other communities, and she said they're going to open site after site after site. Well, I would hope that if she's going to try and do that, she learns some lessons about the way she's done it in Crowborough, because this is not finished. We are not finished objecting to this plan.
Crowborough says no! Crowborough says no! Crowborough says no!
We would urge her to reconsider, and whatever she does, she needs to talk to the people that she's imposing these things on.
If you had a direct line to Keir Starmer and Shabana Mahmood, what would you say to them?
Look after your most vulnerable first. It's your priority to look after your vulnerable.
If they're bringing illegal immigrants into a camp in the dead of night, why are they doing that? They're doing that because it's disingenuous, it's dishonest, it's covert, and they're trying to keep the reality away from the local community of what they're actually doing to us. We've now got to the end of the entrance to the camp.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. We're talking about the story that so much of the media is not talking about, the pro-Iranian protests that were happening in London yesterday. There were people holding banners, there were people holding placards and pictures in favour of the Iranian regime, the repressive, horrible, horrendous regime that subjugates women, that locks people up, that kills people simply for protesting. The kind of freedoms here in this country that we hold so dear, to protest, to have free speech, they're not allowed in Iran. And there are people on the streets yesterday doing Nazi salutes, talking about globalising the Intifada on the streets of London. There are further protests that are happening around the country today. We will make sure we get full coverage of that. We're also talking about Tar Hamlet, the councillor who's running for election in Bangladesh. She's being paid £20,000 a year by you, the taxpayer. We'll talk about the ex-terrorist in Birmingham who praised jihad as a compassionate act, who's set to be a UK councillor. And we'll speak to someone who was at those protests yesterday. Loads to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. We'll talk, of course, about Jeffrey Epstein and Angela Rayner as well, and what's happening in America. Jennifer Ewing will be with us a little bit later on. We get a policing perspective on all these protests too from Mike Neville. So much to discuss here on Talk, so stay with us. If you want to get your voice on the air, I'd love to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. You can text me 87222 with the word Talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voicemail, a WhatsApp text message. Less than a minute, please. Some of them have been over a minute. We want to make sure as many of those get on the air as possible. Please keep them to less than a minute. 0344 499 1000. That's the number for WhatsApp text messages, and also to give me a ring to get your voice on the air. So much to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk. Sean in Gloucester's been in touch and says Keith Stalin needs to go, but so does the Labour Party. He's talking about Keir Starmer, of course, and Starmer's such a bitter and spiteful snake, says Sean, that if he was removed, I think he would call an election out of vindictiveness against those who are trying to remove him. Good. The Tories are no better. For every good policy, they sneak in a load of bad ones through the back door. Very untrustworthy. We need to give Reform UK a chance, and even if they only achieve 10% of what they say they will, it will massively change our fortunes as a country. Another person says, how are these protests free speech when they're clearly racist and discrimination and pure evil? If I was to take to the streets and call for hate against Muslims or war against the Far East, I would be arrested in a second. Darryl in Blackburn says, great work highlighting these hate marches, as you won't be able to for much longer when Starmer provides these people with impunity to do whatever they want, as people who highlight this will be targeted with the anti-Muslim hate law, insanity and two-tier. So much to discuss. I just want to show you on the screen, I'll narrate it for the people who are listening on the radio, about what actually happened yesterday. There was a Nazi salute at one point. The police arrested various people. There were people openly holding signs, placards in favour of the Iranian regime, and Ayatollah Khamenei, who is the repressive, horrendous leader, who is Peter Tatchell as well, who you can see on the screen now, talking about globalising the Intifada. He says non-violent resistance, but of course globalising the Intifada has happened violently. It has happened in Bondi Beach, for example. We can see someone apparently making a Nazi salute there, certainly with a face mask on, a banner in favour of Ayatollah Khamenei. Some of the things people shouting whilst wearing keffiyehs, for example, those around their necks, and holding both Palestinian and indeed Iranian regime flags. Absolutely horrendous stuff. Right then, I want to speak to Momus Najmi, who is a writer and commentator, not just about Tower Hamlets and the former terrorist who may well be a UK councillor, but about everything that is happening today. Momus, you're very welcome to the programme, and thank you for joining me. I just wonder what you make of the protests yesterday.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. The protest yesterday is is expected, but what else are we expecting from these people, right? They have not just anti-Semitic but anti-British views, right? So they are going to express themselves. What I make of it is, like, why are we continuing to allow these people to be over here? That's the only thing that I'm surprised with. And why are we allowing these people who support them, that like the lefties and, the people like, the one that you were showing as well, why do we keep on giving them voice and credibility?
Well, many of these people were born here as well. There are some, of course, who have come here as immigrants. But as you say, it's not just Muslims who are protesting. There are loads of enablers. There are loads of white middle-class British people who say, they want to save the children of Gaza. We all want to save the children of Gaza. We all want the children of Gaza to have a free life, preferably in a democracy, but with enough food and education that's not all about hating Jews. But instead, what we have are people enabling these protests, giving them a face of legitimacy.
Yeah, and I think so. It also shows, like how you said, there's a lot of them are born over here. It shows that they can be born over here, but they will still, only care about the issues that concern them and not have the British sensibility. So being born somewhere doesn't make you of that country as well. And as long as they have the insular point of views, the insular interest and stuff, their own group interests that where they live, they will keep on exhibiting these traits. So when I say, why are we allowing these people, I don't just mean the people who have come over here are immigrants and are not citizens. I also mean the people who are born over here as well. There has to be a recognition that they are not incentivized, right? So either their views are not incentivized. It's not as if they can have these views and exist over here and have legitimacy, right? So you need to take the incentive away. So either they themselves take themselves away from here, or
Are
either
you
way,
saying we should
don't allow
deport
this.
people who were born in this country?
Yeah, we should deport a lot of people. I think so. It doesn't matter where you're born. If you have a dual nationality or something of that sort, if you have completely different interests to Britain, if you're working against the British interests, I think so. We need to have the balls now to act against these bad faith actors, right? And you don't even need to deport them. You just need to take the incentives away. The incentives.
How do we do that? What should the government do to take those incentives away, as you say?
Well, you need a reformation of the whole benefit system, but at the other point as well, you need to take away all these DEI laws and stuff like that, which does not, which disable the police from actually acting as a police. You need to, take have a really hard look at all the police chief officers and stuff like that. That what are the orders that they're giving? Why are they not arresting those people? Why we keep on allowing these things to happen, right? And when it comes to Islam as well, we need to take a hard line on that as well. Like, all the incentives that the legitimacy of Islam enjoys, to take away Islam's recognition as a religion. There's so many different things that a government can do.
We're not going to take away the recognition of Islam as a religion, are we?
Why not? Why not? I mean, if
are you saying that people shouldn't be allowed to practice Islam?
No, they can be allowed to practice Islam, but it should not be recognized as a legitimate religion, because it is not a legitimate religion, right? It is very...
that is a very strong thing to say. I can totally understand how Islamism is something that I am really uncomfortable with. Do you not see a difference between law-abiding Muslims who are simply following the Islamic faith?
I mean, there's a lot of law-abiding Nazis as well. Should we just allow Nazism as well? Then
that's not the same thing. That's not.
It is the same thing, though.
Not.
If you know the theology of Islam, if you know what Muhammad has done, what he had promoted as well, then you would take a hard line. The thing is, we talk about Islam. A lot of people talk about Islam, but we don't know what Islam is. So we keep on saying, okay, there's so many billions of people that follow this religion. There's so many people that do not break the laws and stuff like that. So it is a legitimate religion, but it is not. There's a lot of abuse that goes on within internal families, within Islam. The things that it promotes, it creates these people, right? They don't, these Islamists, so-called radical Islamists and stuff, they don't just come out of thin air. They come from their communities because they follow the proper teachings of Islam.
How is it then possible for someone who follows the teachings of Islam to be totally peaceful and to accept the British way of life and to be a good citizen, but also someone to be radicalised by exactly the same text? I mean, the fact is it not, as is the case with basically every religion, that religious texts taken literally or used in a certain way is very, very different to people who follow, for example, Christianity, but they're very much more New Testament people than Old Testament people.
Yeah, but in Islam, the Quran is the literal word of God, so you have to take it literally. If you're not taking it literally, then you're not following Islam, right?
I mean, there are loads of Muslims who do not take exactly literally the Quran.
Yeah, and they're not Muslims. They are just saying that
they would argue they are.
Yeah, they can argue all they want, but the theology says itself. There's a whole surah. People can go and read the surah in Quran. It's called Surah al-Munafiqeen. It talks about the people who are munafiqs. Munafiqs are people who say that they follow Islam, but they're not really following the actual religion, right? Allah says in the Quran that these people, He's saying to Prophet Muhammad, you may be able to forgive them, but I will never forgive them, right? So these people, they need to be a bit realistic about what they are following and understand that what their own God is saying, if you're not following me exact to the letter, then I will never forgive you, right? We can discuss about the theology of Islam and stuff, but we also have to discuss what threat it poses to us. If we keep on allowing Islam to fester in England, in Britain, the more their demographics increase...
Sorry, can I just ask, Momus, do you not see a distinction between Islam and Islamism?
No, I don't, because there isn't. I mean, people only see it because they don't know Islam. You know what, like Muhammad was an Islamist.
You're essentially saying you're more qualified to make a view on what Islam is than people who actually follow the faith, many people, peaceful people who follow the faith themselves.
Yeah. I would be if I know the religion. Like, how do you know they're not lying to you, right? I mean, in this conversation, I'm probably more qualified anyway. So, like,
Okay, I
'cause
mean,
I know the
you
religion,
know
I
more
follow
about
the
it.
religion.
You clearly know. I've looked into this and studied this, and you're on this program because you're an expert in all of this stuff. But the fact is, Momus, that there are many people who you're essentially accusing of being liars who are lying to you and me simply because they're following a version of Islam that they attest to and they don't see as in conflict with our British values. I mean, many people would see that as an unfair characterization and perhaps an arrogant one.
Yeah, I mean, they can do that. They can say those things, but the truth is the truth, right? Like, so what I'm saying is they're lying to themselves as well if they believe that the Islam is not in conflict with the West, right? So it's not good for them. I'm not saying like just kick them out for believing in Islam. I'm saying that we need to recognize what the right religions are and what the wrong ideologies are and be strong with that so that they can themselves save their souls in the future, right? So they themselves don't become extremists, because one person can be a moderate Muslim. There is no guarantee that their children will be moderate Muslims. All they have to do is go to the mosque regularly and follow the teachings of Quran, and from them will come extremism. The more the demographics increase of theirs, the less moderate they will be, because they don't need to pretend anymore as a whole society. Now, individuals within that society will be different. Individuals within that society might be moderate, might not be moderate. But as a collective, they don't need to be moderate then.
Momus, is your personal background that you were born into a Pakistani Muslim family and you decided to leave Islam? Is that what happened in your case?
Yeah.
And why did you make that decision?
Well, I went through a whole like sort of 6-year research, sort of soul searching research and stuff, looked into the religion and found that it is in conflict with what I believe in, what is human morality, right? So what Muhammad did, you cannot square it off. You cannot say like a prophet of a religion would do those things and then not inspire other peoples to follow his steps. That a prophet that is pro-sex slavery, who had sex slaves, a prophet who married a 9-year-old, married a 6-year-old, consummated the marriage at 9-year-old, a prophet who has done all ridiculous amount of wars and all of these bad things will not inspire people to be bad. You can, because of social pressures, you can keep on fooling yourself, because it's very hard to leave a religion that will sort of penalize you by death if you leave it, right? Your whole society will ostracize you. It's very hard to leave a religion like that. You can keep on fooling yourself. You can keep on being scared of it, or you can realize, like, look, this is only going to lead me to extremism unless I ignore 99% of the text.
All right. Very, very interesting to talk to you, Momus. Thank you for speaking to me today. That's Momus Najmi, who is a writer and commentator. I haven't ever quite heard an interpretation and a set of thoughts just quite like that. Maybe you haven't either. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Jean in Southport says, it's breaking my heart and infuriating me to see our country systematically destroyed by 30 years of calling right-minded people racists and causing hesitancy of the population to speak out. Nick from West Sussex says, morning Cardi P, we are heading into the most serious period of time since the outbreak of World War II. The social construct of the UK is about to fail, and when it does, we will face violence on our streets. When this happens, martial law will be put into place and democracy will become non-existent. I'm scared for our future. Richard is in Wakefield. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Richard, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Thanks, Peter. Great show as usual.
Thank you.
I'm getting slightly frustrated with the media coverage of Iran.
Or lack of.
Well, complete lack of. I'll give you an example. I watched Sky News yesterday, only by accident, and they suggested that there have been 5 explosions in Tehran. What they're not actually covering is that the Israeli IDF are actually taking apart the IRGC completely. Homini's in a bunker hiding. Most of the other guys are fleeing off into the wild somewhere, and the regime has toppled.
Why do you think this is, Richard? Why do you think it is that we hear so much? We knew a lot, some of it true, some of it not true, about what was happening in the Gaza war. But now in Iran, look, there are problems. There's problems with what's true, what's not true. There are problems with the internet and getting things out. But why is it that they seem to just ignore or at least play down what is happening in Iran. I've heard so much about, oh, it's dying down. We don't know if it's dying down, actually. We don't know that.
Well, naivety is one. I think the other thing is that, ignoring other coverage by other media. And there is a media channel that's dedicated, based in Britain, whose one of their correspondents was tried to be strangled yesterday at the demonstration in London. The linking point I'm going to make with the London issue is that all these terrorists, because that's what Iran breeds, that's what they're known for, are now fleeing from the country. And the only country they can actually come to now is the UK, because we're the only ones who've not declared them as a terrorist organisation.
Very good point, Richard. Very good point. The IRGC, not a terrorist organisation. The Muslim Brotherhood, not a terrorist organisation. Really, really good points there, Richard.
So the next time somebody blows up a bus in London again, I just can't get over the naivety of the British government not seeing what's happening abroad. And with respect to the media, and I know you've covered this, but I respect talkTV, is we're interested in what Andrew's been doing, and quite frankly, his sex life has no comparison with what's going on in the Middle East, which could affect us dearly over the next few years.
Well, Richard, really good points there. Listen, thank you for all of that. We were, of course, covering Andrew because lots of it is in the media. We are talking about it. The Epstein files or something we can't talk about. We're talking a lot more, I think, this morning about this, and I really appreciate the call from Richard in Wakefield. Also, Mick in Wellington saying, "How does Chris Philp expect to keep us safe? There's a disorder after Mrs May destroyed the police leadership, massive cuts and reduced standards in public order training because new recruits are no longer robust enough." Barbara says, "Morning, Peter. Great show as always. I agree with some of your callers and also your guests that it's not just Jewish people this country isn't protecting, but all of us. British culture has been eroded by governments allowing illegal immigrants to enter our country. We don't want to pay for them. We don't want them here. I'm 77. I look around at England and I do not recognise my home anymore," says Barbara. Another Barbara says, "Why should Andrew and Mandelson testify to Congress when the Clintons have refused and no other Americans have agreed or been pressured?" That's Barbara in London. It's a good point. I mean, I think they should be compelled to. I think the Clintons should be compelled. I think Mandelson should be compelled. I think Andrew should be compelled. I think it's outrageous that they haven't done that. Lots more to discuss. We'll take your calls, text, tweets and voice notes next here on Talk. Stay with us.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Rob, who says it's laughable hearing Chris Philp banging on about what the government should do with pro-Palestinian marches, inciting chants and threats of violence, when it also happened on the Tories' watch. They didn't do anything, and neither did the Home Office. Deport all illegals and those on visas. Don't make me laugh. Momus certainly talking a little bit about that. Very interesting to hear him. Chris says, why is Mandelson not at his title stripped, as Andrew did, with really not being found guilty? Well, interestingly, Steve Reid, the Housing Secretary, the Community Secretary, has been talking about this on Sky News. Let's just see a little bit of what he said on that. This is what Steve Reid, the government minister, has been saying.
You're asking me here about something that happened nearly 20 years ago. I don't know the full detail of it. I wasn't in government 20 years ago.
But he himself has said he acknowledges that that money did go to his partner.
That's right. I don't know whether he declared it or not, and he should have done. The declaration rules have been brought in by then, so I think it would be for Peter Mandelson to explain whether or not that money was properly declared, and if not, then he will need to account for that. But I don't want to jump the gun and make assumptions. I think we need to find out exactly what happened first.
Steve Reid there, the Community Secretary, speaking on Sky News earlier today. Lots of messages in about Momus Najmi, who was on earlier. What a sensible man, says Steve, who speaks for millions. Good on him. Elliot says, did I miss all the marches organised by and attended by so-called moderate Muslims? Islam will always put Islam first. There are those willing to do the dirty work and those who are not. But the goal is the same, in Elliot's view, domination by Islam. And Tony says, only one religion I know of have people in vast numbers, even governing in the name of that religion, that espouses death in the name of that religion. Your guest had some very valid points. Well, Mark is in Kent, and I think was listening to that interview too. Mark, give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. You're very welcome to the programme. Mark, what would you like to say?
Hello, yes, it was just regarding the Palestine marches and stuff.
Yes, go ahead, yeah.
I was watching a Qatari guy last week on a podcast who was saying about what they do in the Middle East and stuff, and, you know, how they ban all these Muslim brotherhoods and stuff like that. But what we do in here is appease them. Okay, so that's why they allow 6 mosques on the same street. That's why they indoctrinate all the universities, etc., etc. Because it's their plan. It's their greater plan. They've been telling us for decades.
I mean, I don't want to live in Qatar. I think it's a horrible country, and they use slave labour to build things, like the World Cup stadiums and so on.
This guy is in exile from Qatar. Okay. And what he's telling us about is what he's found out over in this country since he's been in exile over here.
Yes.
Okay. He's got a Liam Tuff's podcast.
Okay. I'll maybe look that up. But Mark, do you think banning these protests is the way forward? What about the ideology? How do we deal with that?
Well, the ideology is to undermine our country, right? Undermine all of our laws, etc.
So how do you tackle that, Mark?
Well, the trouble is, and the difficulty we've got now is the next generation have all been born in this country. Okay, so their next generation, they're just as hateful, but they're British citizens. They've been born here. So there's nothing we can do with that. It's too late. We're screwed. We are screwed as a country.
Mark, thanks for your thoughts there. Pretty pessimistic note on all of that. What do you think about what Mark said? 0344 499 1000. James says, I 100% agree with Momus, who was on earlier, Momus Najmi, former Muslim. He turned away from that faith. Ian in Walsall says, have you noticed the police yesterday in their own uniform, not riot dress? I bet they will be out in force today for the anti-Iranian protest. That's Ian in Walsall. The major issue in the UK, says John in Jersey, is no leader of the Islamic faith comes out and criticises the actions of these people. They sit quietly in their mosques, enjoying the chaos being caused, waiting for the chance to take over. These leaders need to be held accountable. John, you're right, and it's actually worse than that. It's worse because moderate Muslims who do come out and condemn this stuff are then targets, and they know that, and that is just another really, really bad thing that is happening. Lots of voice notes coming in. Debbie has busted the 1 minute. It's 1 minute 12 seconds. Please keep them to less than a minute if you can, but nonetheless we will break the rules and hear from Debbie on Iran. This is what Debbie says.
Good morning, Peter. Debbie from Cornwall here. Yeah, I'm just so glad that you guys are having this conversation about the extreme Islamic situation at the moment in this country. It's alarmed me for about the last 10 years. It's just been so predictable what is going to happen. These people are definitely the extremists. You know, I know there are the moderate Islams, but where are they? Where are they? They're too afraid to speak up, which I get. But you can't just... You know, we can't be cowards forever, can we? And if this doesn't get addressed, which I can't see it's going to get addressed in the next 3 years, how can, Labour are not going to do anything about it? They're completely spineless, totally coward, totally bowed down to the extremists. And the extremists are using our generosity and our soft touch left-wing ideology to exploit the West. That's what's happening. That's what's been happening. And it's terrifying that the left just don't see it. And yet Oh my gosh, it's terrifying, yeah, absolutely terrifying. But I'm glad, thankfully, you guys are having this conversation. Thank you, well done, you guys.
Thank you, Debbie, much appreciated. Carl's been in touch on Starmer.
Hi Peter, Carlin Berry. You're talking about treason laws. I'll tell you what, how I'd be convicted, well, I would get convicted of a treason law straight away. First of all, is Keir Starmer. Because what sort of idiot just opens up the borders, lets undocumented men come in, and then distributes them around the country in our communities? He's also allowing China to build huge embassies right in the centre of our capital. China, who are known to be spying on us. As far as I'm concerned, he is the biggest threat to this country. So if he brought in a treason law, that guy should be on trial. Cheers.
Thank you for that, Carl, much appreciated. Zoe in Lancashire says, I really appreciate your views, Peter. I'm sorry sometimes you can't please everyone. It's impossible to do that, and I don't even try anymore, Zoe. But thank you so much for that very kind view. She says, my views are that Starmer needs to stay in power, and that will definitely guarantee that they will never get in power again. I cannot stand the traitor, but if anyone else who takes over, it will cause more damage. Ray says, if Peter Tatchell were to go to Iran, the country he seems to support, he would be hung in public for being gay. Judith says, when do we start to allow these protests? Peaceful protests are one thing, but these which are now taking place are stirring up trouble. This is not the Britain I grew up in. Ian in North Wales says, good morning, Cardi P. In regard to these protests, it should simply be straightforward. Arrest them, deport them if they're on a visa or illegal immigrants, or if they're British citizens, stop their benefits. No lengthy trials, appeals, etc. Just straight off action. Mark says, if there is regime change in Iran, will these be the same kind of Iranians who want to come to the UK in fear of their lives? James says, can I just agree this country has been let down by politicians who put them in place? If the British public refuses to vote and take part in the conversation, then small groups can get people elected with radical views. Vote now or fight later, says James. Well, I would encourage absolutely everybody to use their vote, certainly. And Chris says, why is Mandelson not at his title stripped as Andrew did with really not being found guilty? And Chris says, Chris Philp is saying the normal rubbish about Reform UK. The Tories are dead men and women walking. 14 years and did nothing but increased visas by Boris. Goodbye, Chris. Your lies will not work anymore. Let's have a couple more voice notes, including from Kitty on Iran.
Good morning, Peter. Kitty from Kent. It is excellent to see talkTV airing the views that the left and the Liberals naively find unpalatable about Islamism and its rapid takeover in the UK. It is not a slow takeover. It has been happening for a long time, and it's been well known that they're taking over via the ballot box and the womb, and that is happening in front of our eyes. And I think there needs to be hard action. We need to close down every single mosque where it's uncovered that there is terrorist and extremist activism happening, and there needs to be no apology for it. I just don't know how, with so many apologists in the political elite, that's ever going to happen.
Kitty, thank you. Let's hear from Kevin.
Morning, Peter. Kevin in Sheffield. I completely agree with your guests this morning, especially Phil Dave, who described the Intifada and what it means. These Palestinian protests, they've got to be stopped. I'm sorry, I know we believe in protests, but they've got to be stopped. And pro-Iranian protests, my God, what have we come to? I just fear, as Phil Dave was saying, that this is not just about like the Jewish society. This is anti-West, anti-British, anti-democracy, you name it. And it's, I'm sorry, this country is turning into anarchy, and we've got to get some sort of order back. We've got to get some policing back. We've got to get, we've got to re-educate people. I'm totally flabbergasted by what's happening.
Kevin, I can hear the frustration in your voice, and I hear it from so many viewers and listeners who just cannot understand why the government, the authorities, the police don't get it. They just don't get it. Alex in Norfolk says, Peter, you must take what Momus is saying seriously. You sound as if you don't agree with them at all. My ex-girlfriend is Iranian, living in Ealing, and she is saying the same as Momus. She is becoming more and more frightened at what is happening in London and England more generally, says Alex. I was challenging Momus, yes I was. That's my job to do that. I can't just agree with every single guest, but no, I do agree with the vast majority of what he's saying. I do think there is a distinction between Islam and Islamism. He doesn't, but there we are. Momus is speaking the truth, Peter. As an ex-Muslim, he should know. Stop being so naive, says Elizabeth. Wake up and smell the coffee. Great show today, says Elizabeth. Terry says the guest you had on earlier who explained the religion of Islam gave probably the best and, might I say, bravest explanation I've heard. That clip should be replayed many times. Let's hear a final voice note before the break from Ian on Iran.
Hi Peter, it's Ian from East Grinstead. Talking about these marches in London yesterday and all the marches we've had and all the changes to the country that have happened in the last 10, 15 years, how have our political masters let this happen? Because what's been obvious to the ordinary working person or the walking around our towns and villages, etc., over the last 20 years, we've seen the disintegration of the country and the community, and the society's changing massively. But I don't understand how our political masters of all parties have been oblivious to what's happening, and they've just let it happen, and they've betrayed the country itself. I mean, I just don't understand it.
Ian, thank you for your comments on that. Thanks to Richard, who says, I love your show, but you need to wake up. We're a long way down the path of Iran. Many of us have been warning about this for decades and called everything from conspiracy theorists to racists. Everyone needs to wake up, says Richard in Crawley. And another person says, Peter Cardwell openly, finally admits he's politically homeless. I don't think it's finally, I've been saying it for literally years. But his aggressive attitude and unwillingness to fully listen to seriously held views contrast sharply with other talk hosts. The guy Momus this morning was making some really brave points about his disillusionment with Islam. We had him on for 20 minutes. He said everything he wanted to say. I was very, very willing to listen to him, but I am going to challenge almost every single guest. There's some guests I totally agree with, which will be very clear, but I didn't totally agree with Momus. I'm doing my job, mate. Penny in Essex says, good morning, Peter. There's no going back now. Sick of going to bed angry and waking up angry. It's a fact that where there are Muslims, there's always trouble. Fact, nothing to do with racism. This is supposed to be a Christian country, but the government are determined to make it Islamic. If these protesters are all for Iran, Palestine and Gaza, why don't they go there? A gay man was saying that he would gladly go with his husband to Palestine. Are they that stupid that they don't realise they will be put to death there? Ye gods, says Penny in Essex. Unfortunately, the problem is they are that stupid. There are lots of people who just do not realise, who do not get it, who don't understand that Hamas do not want, trans for Palestine. They don't want them. They're not interested in them. In fact, they would put them to death. So Penny, very, very good points there. Dan in Hampshire says, I find it exasperating. MPs like Chris Philp seriously think we'll believe them on deporting illegals, leaving the ECHR and tackling the welfare budget. They did nothing to fix any of this when in power. How can they possibly think we'd trust them again? And one more on Chris Philp before the break comes from Lorraine, who says, oh dear, Chris Philp is still showing why the Tories are condemned to oblivion. I really take great issue with MPs who distort the truth to gaslight the public. Philp is no different to the BBC with his cut and splice comments against reform and his false rhetoric regarding the Russian and Ukraine invasion. Reform UK have been clear over two-child benefit. It will not be for those who don't work. It is for working British families on low incomes, and quite frankly, we need to help and encourage young British people who work to have families. Philp simply helps reform with such comments, says Lorraine. Loads of messages, loads of calls, text, tweets and voice notes coming in. Keep them to less than a minute, please, on the voice notes if you would. Heidi Backram is someone I've admired from afar for a very long time. I've followed her on Twitter. She is a very brave woman who goes in and takes videos and distributes lots of information about what's happening at the protests and elsewhere. The real problems with the growth of Islamism and the problems with anti-Semitism in this country. I don't know why I haven't never had on her programme before. It's sort of, I was chatting with her last night online and then I thought, actually, no, we'll have her on today because she was at the protest yesterday. She's coming next. You're going to want to hear what she has to say. She was there yesterday. Stay with us here on Talk.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, some of the footage that you've seen of what happened in London yesterday at those pro-Palestinian protests, but also pro-Iranian protests, pro-Iranian regime protests. I'm for the Iranian people, of course I am. What I am not for is for the horrendous regime that's not even outlawed the IRGC by this government. Now, Heidi Backram is an indefatigable campaigner who takes a great personal risk, takes a lot of footage of those different protests and actually distributes some of it that isn't hers, but a lot of it is hers herself. She joins me now. Heidi Backram, the activist and campaigner, you're very, very welcome to the programme. Can you just tell me about yesterday, Heidi?
Well, as soon as I came off the tube at Russell Square, there's just like an assault of Free Palestine shouting in the tube station itself, and lots of people trying to give you things or sell you things, and a lot of these things are very hateful. And as I turned the corner, I immediately saw these pro-Iranian regime giant flagpoles with the Palestine flag and the Ayatollah's flag underneath, and the Lebanese flag. So these people have definitely put these movements together, and they were all over the march as well. It was really disturbing.
You've been monitoring these marches for some time. Has the Iranian element always been there, or has it increased because of what's been happening recently?
Yeah, I mean, last year when we had the attacks from Israel, or the 12-day war, they were actively campaigning and doing protests against those the bombings that the Israeli and American air forces did against Iran. And you know, we saw a Palestinian cafe in London hosting a bombing party, a watch party for when the Iranian regime was bombing Israel, and they were very happy and having a celebration.
So when you were taking some footage yesterday, just tell us about some of the things that people were doing, because there'll be, as you probably know, we broadcast both on TV and on radio, and on the telly we're doing some of the footage at the moment, but on the radio people will need it to be described to them. I mean, you saw, I think, from the footage that I've seen on your excellent Twitter, you've seen Nazi salutes, you've seen people shouting, chanting things. Just talk us through some of that, if you would.
So I didn't see the Nazi salutes, but I mostly saw the pro-regime people who gathered near to the Israeli and Iranian dissident counter-protest that was there, and that seemed to really trigger some really insane hatred. And they were showing images in the counter-protest of the Iranian protesters being shot to death, and alongside some footage from October 7th. And these people were reacting to that in this very hateful way. There was one of them had a amp, and he was saying, "Long live Khamenei." So, you know, the Ayatollah, the second Ayatollah that's been in charge since the revolution. And these are the leaders that have ordered the murder of tens of thousands of unarmed protesters, hunting them in hospitals and at home, and arresting the surgeons that treated them. These are evil people, and these pro-Palestine protesters were celebrating them, shouting them at their potential victims.
You've monitored a lot of these protests, Heidi. You do work that I greatly admire, and I think you have taken a lot of personal risk to do so as well, and I really salute you for that. You're a lot braver than I am. Your family has had a horrendous time in the last few years. I just want you to tell our viewers and listeners about your husband's relatives, if you would.
On October 7th, my husband's cousin, Zaki Dan, was at home. And when the attacks began, he was living in one of the kibbutzes that was very near to the border, only a few hundred meters. So they were one of the first that were invaded by the terrorists. And his home was invaded. His 18-year-old daughter was shot in the head, and she died instantly. And then he was kidnapped along with his neighbor, Omri Moran, to Gaza we now know that he was probably murdered sometime in December after the first ceasefire deal. And he had been promised that he would be released in that deal because he was being held with a woman and some children. But they separated them and then they murdered him. And he came home to us last February in a coffin. So when I was standing there near these pro-Iranian regime people, just before that, you know, the pro-Palestinian people were just as hateful, if not more. And one of the men was, you know, shouting at the Israelis and taunting them. And he started to make the symbol of 7 with his fingers. And he was shouting, 7th of October, 7th of October, and grinning. And I just felt sick to my stomach. And that sort of thing is not something that's necessarily illegal, like the Intifada chant, but it is a knife to the heart for people that were directly affected and caused me a lot of distress. And actually is kind of signaling to everybody around him that he supports Hamas. And that is illegal in this country.
How do you, I mean, that is, first, thank you for telling us that. And I'm not surprised that you feel that way. It must be horrendous. You put yourself, I'm not criticising you at all. In fact, I'm in great admiration of what you do. But what you do is you get the message out there and you put yourself in these situations. Do you talk to these people or do you simply film them? What do you, just tell us a little bit about what you do. Have you had conversations with them?
I think they're very difficult to have conversations with because they're so ideological that it's a brick wall when you're speaking to them, and they dehumanize you so much that all they see is an enemy. So it's difficult to be human in those situations, and the temperature is raised so high that people kind of act in ways that maybe they wouldn't normally, and that's what happens when this mob mentality takes over. There was one point where some people recognized me and they started to harass me and follow me down the street, and then eventually they started shouting my name. And I thought, okay, it's time to leave because it started to get really threatening. And I don't want to put myself at risk, but I feel that there are a few people doing this, but there aren't enough. And the police clearly aren't on top of this as they should be. So they need the extra eyes and ears on the ground to understand what they're seeing and to understand what's happening and be able to report it accurately.
What is your message to people who might say, I'm going on this march because I want peace in the Middle East. I'm going on this march because I'm worried about Gazan children being killed by the Israelis. I'm going on this march because I want to talk about a free Palestine. Often people who are middle-class liberals who, in a sense, I think anyway, attempt to legitimise these marches and say, oh, the kind of people that you film, that's just a fringe element. What would your message be to them?
I mean, I think you have to look at who you're marching with. I mean, there were Nazi salutes, there were pro-regime supporters, there were anti-Semites, there were Hamas supporters. These weren't fringe people. And actually, we're seeing this from the stage. So we saw MPs supporting Palestine Action activists, and these are people that have used violence to achieve their political goals and are prescribed. And so it's not that this is just, you know, an edgy end of the spectrum. This is embedded in this whole movement. And we saw last week Zahir Birawi was sanctioned by the US government for links to Hamas. And he is the head of the Palestinian Forum here, who are one of the main organizers of the marches. So this is not, you know, some radical, annoying people who are just sprinkled through the protests. This is fundamental to this movement.
Heidi, it's great to talk to you. I want to talk to you on a future occasion at some stage as well. I really admire what you do, and your citizen journalism actually informs a lot of what I do, so I want to thank you for that. That's Heidi Backram there, an activist and campaigner. Really good to talk to her. I should have had her on the show before, don't know why I haven't. We'll definitely have her on again if she's willing to come on. Lots in that. Really, really interesting to hear from someone who was actually there monitoring that. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Loads of people getting in touch. Joanna says your guest, Momus Madri, is correct. I was brought up in a cult Christian religion. I know exactly where he comes from. He is correct. brainwashing from the day you were born. Jess says, why are the marches in London anti-UK in fact allowed to go ahead when British flags and marches and Tower Hamlets are banned? It's the Muslim vote that Labour want, says Jess. Margaret says, we have lost our country. Shabana Mahmood should make a statement. Let's wait and see. Silence speaks volumes. That's Margaret in Birmingham. Michael in North Staffordshire says, the right to protest is not as important as maintaining law and order. As such, very strict conditions as to where, when and how any and all protests take place must become the norm. I'm tired of hearing our right to protest is so important. No, it isn't. There are multiple ways of protesting, not simply walking around our towns and cities shouting hate speech. In relation to banning Islam, I 100% agree with your guest. We should ban it. That's Michael in North Staffordshire. Lots more calls, text, tweets and voice notes coming your way in just a second. Stay with us.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Sinks, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, Carlos Alcaraz has become the... Alcaraz, not Alcatraz. What am I talking about? Carlos Alcaraz has become the youngest ever man to complete a career Grand Slam after defeating Novak Djokovic in the Australian Open final. The Spanish tennis star beat Djokovic in 4 sets to keep the veteran from the unprecedented 25th Grand Slam singles title. I somehow think Djokovic will be back at one sport I know a tiny bit about, not that I know anything about any other sport. Lots of other people getting in touch on all sorts of different aspects. Sue says, morning Peter, morning Suze. Heidi's story is heartbreaking and illustrates how our civilization is slipping away in front of our very eyes while our politicians play the fiddle. Melanie says, it's about time Starmer started looking after this country. Stop being scared of losing the Muslim vote. He is a waste of space. He needs to stop these illegal demonstrations, close the IRGC London office, kick these killers out of the country. We need our country back, and to stop these illegal immigrants coming into this country, send them back to where they came from. We have no idea who we are allowing in. And Phil says, your guest Momus is absolutely correct. He says everything that all other politicians and commentators are afraid to say. Until these things can and are openly said, the UK will continue along the path to ultimate decline. Great show and great guest. He's certainly been very popular. John's in London and has some thoughts on all of this. He has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. John, go ahead. You're very welcome to the programme.
Good morning, Peter. Thank
Morning.
you. I think it's very sad, actually. I'll be 70 this year, in the spring of this year. And I grew up, I'm from Ireland, actually. Well, I was born here. My parents are Irish Catholics, although being the oldest of us all, I saw the troubles in Northern Ireland and everything. And I was sad at the lack of integration and getting plain just human getting on with each other.
Yes.
And I've always seen myself as British with Irish heritage, even though I've grown up in a Catholic family. The friends I had as a student and in martial art, which is something I've had all my life, are from all walks of life. It didn't matter where you come from, what colour you were, or anything else. And back in the day, I had Muslim friends from Pakistan, from Tanzania, from Iraq, Iran, all over the place. And we all got on the whole. And everyone followed their own religion or didn't follow a religion, but we got on. And
so what's changed, John? What has changed, do you think?
I think the only thing I can think of, Peter, I went back to Preston, where my wife's from, where I met her, and I lived 17 years. I went back some years ago, and I was shocked because there seemed to be whole areas of the town, now a city, that were just ghettoized is the wrong word, but where it was just communities that stayed separate to other communities, and the young people that would have been my friends when I was their age, instead of the guys, for example, in normal, I'm not talking about when going to prayer now, but instead of just in jeans and a shirt or jeans and a jacket or whatever, we're all wearing traditional dress. And that surprised me. Not that I'm saying that there's something wrong with that, but I just thought, what's happened? Because
I just agree with you. I think multiculturalism has failed. People need to integrate. You go to a country, you've got to have their values, don't you?
I agree. I lived in Germany for a year, and I did my best to learn German, to get on. If I didn't work, I didn't eat. And the reason why I moved to Germany, Peter, was because I needed a change of scenery after losing a 25-year-old sister to cancer.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, John.
Not at all. You know, there's always a silver lining. It's how I ended up in London. But she married my best friend at the time, whose parents were Muslim. You know, it was a different world.
Well, John, listen, thanks for your call, and I wish you a very happy 70th that's coming up in the spring. Let's hear Michelle in London's thoughts. She's also given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Michelle, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good morning, Peter. Great show as always.
Thank you.
I've been listening, and you do put some very good points out. But me, myself and I, when I was growing up, we never had this. Everybody got on. We all went to each other's houses. We all got on. Now, with all this protesting, this is just my thoughts, right? I thought protesting was about, you know, like treating our veterans or treating our old people. It's about sorting out our country. I don't care what happens abroad. This is not my business. So I would gladly pay my money for, if you want to protest about Gaza and that, then you should go out there. It's just disrupting. And all these people coming into the country, and don't forget, the Conservatives done it, but I don't understand. You've come to a country that's given you freedom, and all you want to do is destroy it.
They might say they're using that freedom because the freedom to protest you wouldn't have in places like Iran. I think it's fair enough to have a protest about something that's happening elsewhere, but do you have to bring London to a standstill every single time? And I suppose it's not just about what's happening in Iran or Gaza or whatever. It's saying that the kind of values of those terrorists, in some cases anyway, should be brought to this country, and that's what I worry about, Michelle.
Yes, and I agree with you totally, but it's got nothing to do with us. We, you know, our flag, don't forget, people run to this country because we flew this flag, because they were going to be, like, treated equal.
Yeah.
And all these people coming over, I mean, illegal, people need to look it up, because they should not have rights over the British people. We are the laughing stock of the whole planet. And, sorry, Peter, but if you want to bring all this in, why should we change our way of living and our culture to accept barbaric? Me, myself and I think the whole government is like being taken over. I think that, oh, sorry, I forgot the word. I did tell your lady.
It's okay. It's all right, Michelle. I just got to go to the news in a second. If you just make your final point briefly.
Well, what it is, I just think everyone's a demon. Okay. Nobody is like normal anymore.
OK, well, listen, Michelle, thank you very much for your thoughts on that. There's lots more to come in the next hour. Of course, we will talk to Jennifer Ewing about the American aspect of Andrew and so many other aspects, Mandelson as well. I want to get your thoughts on what's happening on our streets too. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Stay with us.
Hello from Crowborough, where the local residents are enraged with what has happened to their community merely overnight when just 27 single male asylum seeker illegal migrants were bussed into their military training camp. Behind me are local residents, people from all over the country. Shabana Mahmood has said that this is an effective way of getting rid of those expensive, flashy asylum hotels. But unfortunately, these people are still placed within the community.
Whole town is very afraid because these are unvetted men from countries that are, the government warn us not to go to. I've got an 18-year-old daughter and she gets the bus opposite camp. Do you feel safe for her? No, so that will have to stop. Right. We'll either have to wait with her or take her to wherever she needs to go.
The reason we're here today is because I live in Crowborough and my family, I've got a wife and children, and just worried about, my wife walking to work and my sons, walking about. Anything can happen, can't it, that nowadays, Nigel, what's going on, what's happening in this country. So I'm just concerned and frightened,
There was support from other towns, other communities, because of course Shabana Mahmood has threatened other communities, and she said they're going to open site after site after site. Well, I would hope that if she's going to try and do that, she learns some lessons about the way she's done it in Crowborough, because this is not finished. We are not finished objecting to this plan.
Crowborough says no! Crowborough says no! Crowborough says no!
We would urge her to reconsider, and whatever she does, she needs to talk to the people that she's imposing these things on.
You had a direct line to Keir Starmer and Shabana Mahmood. What would you say to them?
Look after your most vulnerable first. It's your priority to look after your vulnerable.
If they're bringing illegal immigrants into a camp in the dead of night, why are they doing that? They're doing that because it's disingenuous, it's dishonest, it's covert, and they're trying to keep the reality away from the local community of what they're actually doing to us. We've now got to the end of the entrance to the camp, we've got cameras, we've got police drones. It's like a cloud that's come over this community.
Hello from Crowborough, where the local residents are enraged with what has happened to their community merely overnight when just 27 single male asylum seeker illegal migrants were bussed into their military training camp. Behind me are local residents, people from all over the country. Shabana Mahmood has said that this is an effective way of getting rid of those expensive, flashy asylum hotels. But unfortunately, these people are still placed within the community.
Whole town is very afraid because these are unvetted men from countries that are, the government warn us not to go to. I've got an 18-year-old daughter.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company on this Sunday afternoon. There's loads to discuss both now, during the week as well. I'll be with Julia Hartley-Brewer for Prime Minister's Questions, and then Friday, Saturday and Sunday, the mid-morning programmes, I will be here. Another hour to go in this show and so much to discuss. So many people want to get in. If you're one of them, 0344 499 1000 is the number. We're going to talk about what's happening in America at the moment with Minneapolis, with Mandelson, with Epstein and the Iranian protests, pro-Iranian regime protests here in the UK. We'll talk about that from a policing perspective as well. Mike Neville's coming up and Jennifer Ewing from Republicans Overseas is in the studio. Loads to discuss. If you've got a question you want me to ask, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, send me a voice note less than a minute please on the main number. You can send me a WhatsApp text message on the main number, or you can give me a ring on the main number, which is of course 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss in the next hour here on Talk. Carl in Richmond has sent me a message to say, watching the protests lately has left me feeling genuinely sad. We seem to import every global conflict onto UK streets, yet there's very little space to talk about the pressures facing people here at home. I support free speech and peaceful protest, but I can't help feeling we're losing a shared sense of country and common purpose. It increasingly feels like we need to ask, who is speaking up for the UK itself? Says Carl in Richmond. That is a really, really good message, Carl. I really appreciate with that, and I hope that we can talk about that certainly as well. We've also been talking about tennis. Carlos Alcaraz came on the scene. We called him Alcatraz. Great win for him. Take care. Another great show, says Margaret. Escape from Alcatraz is a great film. Yes, I've seen it. Clint Eastwood. It's excellent. And Michael in North Staffordshire says, if the government want to make a quick improvement to policing, they can introduce a national police public order unit made up of officers from all across the country who travel around policing protests and become experts in public order offences, and who see the same protesters nationwide. When they aren't involved in training and protest, then they can provide the border force raids to repatriate overstayers and illegal immigrants in our country, says Michael in North Staffordshire. Very, very interesting points coming in. I love the wide selection of opinions. Keep them coming in. 0344 499 1000. There's so many aspects of American politics and society that are influencing what's happening in this country, not least what has been happening with Jeffrey Epstein and the Epstein files being released. And Steve Reid is the Housing Secretary. He was on Sky News earlier. He was asked specifically about Peter Mandelson, the former ambassador to the United States, who's come up in these files again, particularly in regard to his husband being given money by Jeffrey Epstein. There's also a very embarrassing photograph of Peter Mandelson in his underpants that has been in the papers today and online too. Let's just hear what Steve Reid told Sky News earlier this morning.
You're asking me here about something that happened nearly 20 years ago. I don't know the full detail of it. I wasn't in government 20 years ago.
But he himself has said he acknowledges that that money did go to his partner.
That's right. I don't know whether he declared it or not, and he should have done. The declaration rules have been brought in by then, so I think it would be for Peter Mandelson to explain whether or not that money was properly declared, and if not, then he will need to account for that. But I don't want to jump the gun and make assumptions. I think we need to find out exactly what happened first.
Well, Jennifer Ewing's with us now. She is a spokeswoman for Republicans Overseas UK. Jennifer, great to have you in the studio.
Hi,
How are you doing? You well?
Thanks for having me. Yep.
From the Mandelson perspective, he has been, lots of people saying that he should be giving evidence to Congress. Certainly the Prime Minister has talked about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor giving evidence to Congress. The Clintons have refused to. Give us your perspective on all of this.
Sure. So, one, I'm happy that these files have come out, and it's going to be the gift that keeps on giving. There's going to be a lot of misinterpretations of them, and a lot of shocking and, quite frankly, depraved information to come out. With regards to Congress, as somebody who voted for the current president on an America First agenda, I don't want our Congress to get bogged down in every single person in this in these Epstein files, of which there are a lot. If any of these people need to be prosecuted by the police or, you know, for crimes, absolutely. I think, as a matter of fact, a lot of people would love to see that. You know, let's not forget that, you know, it's only Ghislaine Maxwell that's in prison right now. Where are the people that she trafficked?
Well, exactly.
So I'd love to see that from a police perspective.
It's a very good perspective. And it was actually Emily Thornberry, even a stop clock tells the right time twice a day. It was actually Emily Thornberry who said the people who are actually being held accountable for this are only Mandelson, Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell, three British people. Where are the Americans?
Yeah, that's a great point.
But from that perspective, do you think it's a waste of time to have congressional hearings, even if the Clintons were to come, or Andrew, or whoever? It should solely be a criminal matter, in your opinion?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
And that's just purely selfish. We have so much other work to do in the United States. And, you know, getting back to your caller, Carla, a few moments ago, when she said, hey, we're concentrating on all these different things, like what about the streets of Britain? What about our interests? And I worry that it opens up the floodgates, and then we put every single person that's going to come out of these files, you know, on a congressional hearing.
It's also, the thing with the files is, I think it's good they're released, I agree with you, but it's kind of data, it's not really evidence, it's bits of that need to all be kind of put together and coordinated, and there is a huge risk that it's badly put together, or conclusions are drawn that shouldn't be drawn because there's no clear timeline in all of that. It's just, I mean, if you were to read all the, you know, WhatsApps that we had between the two of us, for example, you wouldn't have a clear picture because we'll have had other conversations, we'll have had conversations on air, off air, whatever. So actually it's not a full picture, and I do slightly worry about that as well.
Absolutely, and that's the reason why a lot of people said, hey, we don't want to open this can of worms because there's going to be so many things taken out of context, and you're already seeing that, quite frankly.
Do you ever think we'll get the full picture here? Do you ever think there'll be truth and justice, especially now Epstein's dead, no tears about that, but Virginia Giuffre, for example, is very sadly no longer with us either, and given the passage of time, Steve Reid was talking about a couple of decades there, it is very difficult to piece this all together.
I mean, my personal view is that this was clearly some sort of an you know, intelligence operation that for blackmail, right? Because you look at all the people, and some of the things that came out yesterday, people were saying, oh, there's a guy, Michael Saylor, right, who's from Strategy, he's a Bitcoin guy, and they're saying it's an email from Peggy Siegel, who's Epstein's publicist, saying, I don't know how to blackmail this guy. He's too autistic, you know, he doesn't have an ego, and, you know, I'm paraphrasing here, but so, and then Elon Musk has pushed back a little bit, saying, hey, you know, I didn't play ball with them either. So I think it'll be interesting the ways in which people defend themselves around this. But to think this was just some random, you know, sort of pedophile ring is, I think, not zooming out enough to what's actually going on. And that is the reason why we may not get to the bottom of this. There's too many powerful people involved in it from all areas of society and countries.
I want to talk a little bit, the major theme of this programme today has been the pro-Iranian regime protest, pro-Palestinian protests in London yesterday. You live in London, and you saw some of this yesterday?
Well, so I saw it online yesterday, but what I did walk through accidentally last Sunday was a totally different protest outside of the US Embassy, and it was full of flags of, joint flags, US, Iran and Israel, right? And these were all people that wanted the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi to come back, right? That's one angle of things. Then there's, that's a lot of the diaspora. And then there's another angle that want, you know, these former MEK people to come back. That's, you know, more Islamic. And then, of course, there's the people in Iran who are on the ground and feel like it's not that simple, right? Because you can't just airport somebody in, especially somebody who's not been there for 47 years, and think that the Iranian people are going to go, okay, that's, you know, they might think that's an American puppet, that's an Israeli puppet. So the Iranian people who are out on the streets, or I don't think they're out on the streets today, but who have been, you know, they're the ones that need to come up with the leader, otherwise he won't be followed.
When President Trump says help is on the way, and we see now that the framework for negotiations is taking shape according to the Iranians, according to this armada that's been sent. I'm not sure it's quite an armada, but nonetheless there is an attempt to get some resolution there. How do you see that situation? How do you see it now, and how do you see it developing?
Sure. I mean, very complicated and very tricky is the answer. Keep in mind that Trump does not have a mandate to go into more foreign countries and start wars. If you read the new U.S. defense strategy that kind of got lost, but it came out on the 23rd of January right out of Davos, and it clearly States, we are no longer in the regime change business. And so he doesn't have a mandate to do that, right? So what does help look like? Well, it looks like exactly what is in the defense strategy, which is peace through strength. And he said with this flotilla or armada, he said, look, they have to float somewhere, so why not close to Iran? That is peace through strength. It's called, gunboat diplomacy. So, but as far as I am aware, that he is still very much hoping for some sort of a negotiation. We don't know what's going on in the back channels, but he's publicly said, and that looks like no nukes and please stop killing your protesters. So the question is, which nobody can seem to answer, is, what happens next? You don't want it to turn into another Syria or worse, it could escalate to a nuclear situation. And so I think there is no simple answer, and anybody that tells you it's this person or it's that person or just start bombing. I mean, if you take out, even if you were to do a regime change, right, which I know people like Senator Lindsey Graham are salivating at the mouth for, and certain other people, you take out the Ayatollah, well, 50 other clerics pop up.
Of course,
and how do you get those? Just, indiscriminately bomb the country? That's nuts. So I don't think that's the best way to do it.
It's a very, very good point. And actually with Syria and Turkey, for example, we could talk all day about what's happened there, their attacks on the Kurds, for example, the death toll, the mysterious explosions in Iran as well. There's so much to talk about. I just wonder as well, when you look at Trump's pressures at home, particularly domestically on Minnesota, the 2 protesters who were killed there by ICE agents, how do you see that actually developing? Because there's a lot of pressure on him. There are people who've made up their mind about that. There is information that's come out that's been false. There's been information that's come out that we don't quite know. I mean, what is your reading of that situation?
So unlike the Iranian situation, the situation in Minnesota is very clear. And for anybody who has the intellectual curiosity, all you need to do is look at, why are we hearing about Minneapolis? Number one, it is what's called a sanctuary city and a sanctuary state. And what does that mean? It means that the state and local authorities are not cooperating with the federal ICE agents when they come to arrest illegal criminals. So why are you seeing Minneapolis, play out when you're not seeing it in other cities? And that's because in other cities, what will happen is in jails, local jails, not prisons, a local authority will let the ICE agents know, hey, we're letting out these 5 guys. They are in the country illegally. They're being let out. You might want to come detain them. So these incidents need to be taken off the street, and why it is a tragedy that these 2 people died, this very much could have been prevented. Could have been prevented by having, basically like areas in which you can peacefully protest and which the ICE agents are doing your job. And while you do have a right to protest, you do not have the right to basically obstruct a federal agent from doing his job. And that's what both of those people were doing. Now, this is also incredibly organized. Like, these people pop into action at no time at all. We know from a Signal chat group that there's actually a manual teaching these people how to be ICE observers and how to stop their trying to, detain these illegal criminals. And let's keep in mind how bizarre this whole situation has gotten. I mean, first of all, Trump, the number 1 and 2 issue were the economy and closing the border and stopping this. So he has a mandate to do this, and however we get it done, is going to be messy, quite frankly, if the local and state authorities are not cooperating.
Yeah, it's a very good point in that regard. Jennifer, thank you. That's Jennifer Ewing there, spokeswoman for Republicans Overseas UK. Whatever you think about what she said, give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Some breaking news now on Talk, and that's that a woman has been stabbed to death in a busy area of London in what has been called a deeply concerning attack. Police were called to reports of a stabbing in Pound Lane in Willesden at around 4 o'clock yesterday. A 50-year-old woman was found with stab wounds. She died at the scene. A 30-year-old man, believed to be known to the victim, has been arrested on suspicion of murder. He's been taken into custody at a North London police station, according to the Metropolitan Police. Tony Bellis, who is the detective superintendent responsible for local policing at Brent, said the force would maintain an elevated police presence in the area over the coming days. An incident of this nature, he said, is tragic and deeply concerning, and our thoughts remain with the victim's family, friends and all those affected. Based on what we know at this stage, this is believed to be an isolated incident. There's no information to suggest a wider risk to the public. Detective Chief Inspector Rebecca Woodsford said this incident happened in a busy part of Willesden. I'd like to thank members of the public who provided first aid and called the emergency services. A suspect was arrested within several hours of the incident and he remains in custody. Our priority, says Detective Chief Inspector Rebecca Woodsford, is to establish the circumstances around what happened. However, based on our inquiry so far, there's nothing to suggest any wider risk to the public. So that's a woman who was stabbed to death in Willesden, busy area of London, in a deeply concerning attack at Pound Lane, Willesden, around 4 o'clock yesterday. If there's anything more on that, of course, between now and 1 o'clock, we will bring that to you. We'll take your calls, texts, tweets and voice notes next here on Talk. 0344 499 1000, the number to get in touch. Lots more to come between now and 1 o'clock.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much to everybody who has been in touch, including Leslie, who says, Peter, why have these protesters left their despotic country for a better life, yet want to inflict and bring that ideology to the UK? Another person says, I spoke to family on the Isle of Wight and told them about the pro-Iranian protests and how frightened I am. They don't believe me. Please keep telling people the truth of what is happening in the UK. June, we will do that, absolutely. I want to speak to Daniel in Shropshire, who's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Daniel, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter. These protests yesterday, something that wasn't on the footage, but there was photos circulating of, was just some of the. What we're seeing again is this rise of what can only be described as Islamo-Marxism. Mm-hmm. Because yesterday we saw, again, groups such as Stand Up to Racism, the Socialist Workers' Party, the Revolutionary Communist Party, all involved in these protests. And again, there's just silence from politicians around this red, essentially, well, someone call it a red-green alliance.
Red-green alliance, yeah, I've heard that said before. And I do find that, I mean, it's happened on numerous occasions, it's happened historically as well, but it keeps happening, and certainly we see people with very, very differing ideas about how to run a country. It's when you see, Queers for Palestine, for example, when that campaigning group, I just think, do you even realise the irony of this and the absurdity of your position?
Well, considering that, what I find baffling was, you go back to 1979, the Iranian Revolution. The Iranian Revolution was caused by a red-green alliance of leftists and Islamists overthrowing the Shah. Mm-hmm. And the moment the revolution ended, Khomeini turned, and his Islamists turned on their leftist allies and killed 30,000 of them.
And we've actually seen, even in this country, where some of those leftists attempting to support some of the Islamists, they've been told, we've seen footage of this, we've seen your struggle is not our struggle, you know, you're not part of this, off you go. They're useful idiots. That's what they are, Daniel.
Yeah. It comes down to the fact that both leftists and Islamists, they're allies because they have a common enemy. Mm-hmm. They both have a putrid hatred for Western civilization.
I can't disagree with a word of that, Daniel. Listen, thanks for your thoughts. Daniel in Shropshire there. Rachel says, it is Antifa and the middle classes who are a toxic, dangerous and empowering force for Islam in this country. We need to dissuade, educate and enlighten a large chunk of the nation on the truth of Islam in the Middle East. How on God's green earth will we do this when the arrogance of the left has a proclivity towards disbelieving fact if it challenges their entrenched moral beliefs? I just can't see any future but division in the UK. Yours despondently, Rachel. Well, I mean, great points there, Rachel. Again, very, very hard to disagree with. Let's hear a few voice notes now. Nick has been in touch.
Good morning, Peter. This is Nick in Oxford. Great show as ever. Very simply put, in regards to allowing radical Islam to get a political foothold in a country, you just have to look at Lebanon and what happened. It went from a paradise to, well, what it is today, with all the issues related to it, radical Islam and the issues that they had in Beirut in the 70s and 80s. So I just wish, and this is what winds me up the most about communists, socialists, Marxists, whatever you want to call them, they just will not learn from history. Anyway, great show. Thank you very much. Bye.
Very good points there, Nick. Thank you. Let's hear from Laura.
Morning, Peter. Laura in Wiltshire. I can't tell you how furious I am about these marches and idiots like Peter Cardwell, who occasionally does the right thing, but really I'd love to see how he would fare in a serious Islamic state like Iran. Not so well. And I, along with your interviewee, just say, how dare these people who have all of the rights and freedoms that they get here behave like this and want us to become something else? We have to stop it, and if that means curtailing some of their rights for this appalling anti-Semitism and incitement to violence, we're going to have to do it, Peter. It's getting serious now. Great show.
Laura, thank you for that. Let's hear what Mark has to say.
Morning, Peter. Mark in Lincolnshire. Yeah, regarding Islam, I mean, I'm an advocate for it being banned outright completely. Here's a reason why. Psalm 46:5, God is within her, she will not fall. That is a saying that's become quite a comfort to somebody called Lumna Zaidi, who talk about on their channel quite a few times. I think personally she's on the verge of leaving Islam, which I don't blame her at all. I think Christ is calling to her. She's been talking about, she keeps coming back to the Holy Bible. She's been reading scripture. She's been posting bits of scripture. That's one of the things that she's posted to give her comfort. There's something she can't find within Islam. You know, the women are held with such high regard, etc. I just think that Islam is just intolerant of anything else. It can't live with anything else. You might have nice Muslims, but you'll also have absolute tons of, well, frankly, nutcases. So it has to be banned. Cheers. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Mark. I just disagree with you. I believe in religious freedom, and I do think that most religions are tolerant of others, perhaps, but they're essentially saying, I mean, if you're a Christian, you're essentially saying, you know, this is the one true way to heaven, and if you don't agree with that, you're going to hell. That is a form of intolerance, I suppose. It doesn't necessarily mean that you go around telling people they're hell-bound infidels or horrible people or whatever. But I just can't agree on that. I just think there are many people who follow Islam and are totally peaceful in this country. That's just a fact. I'm afraid that's not really an opinion. Let's hear from Mohammed, who's been in touch on banning Islam.
Hi, Peter. Iranian here, Mohammed. Just wanted to let you know that we've been fighting this evil regime and this evil death cult of ideology called Islam for 14th century. Finally, they are massacring us and they want to erase us. However, that's not the issue. We will fight to the end. But my warning to you and your listeners is that, first of all, you need to realize wherever Islam goes, misery follows, okay? This is not about liberalism, left or right or anything else anymore. Wherever Islam goes, misery follows. And if you do not stand, all those good British people English people, American people, Europeans, if they don't stand with us to defeat this, you are going to fight this in your own streets. This is the warning I'm telling you. Believe you me. Thank you.
Okay, Mohammed, thank you for that. I want to hear a voice note now from Rob on Keir Starmer.
Hello, Peter. It's Rob here in Starbridge, mate. Great show as always, boss. Peter, regarding Keir Starmer being a traitor to the country, if you look up traitor, yeah, it's someone who betrays trust, loyalty and allegiance. And in my opinion, he's done all three. So yes, by definition, he is a traitor. Thank you, mate. Great show as always. Bye-bye.
Well, Rob, thank you, and thanks for being faithful to this programme. Paul's in Hartlepool and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Paul, you're very welcome. What would you like to say?
Hey, Peter. What a late is. I really feel that we should have an ISA type police force now. ISA type style police force.
Listen, I think ISA has been very effective, and Trump has been very effective when it comes to immigration. The problem is that, you know, 2 people have died, Paul. I don't want that to happen.
But not carrying guns. I mean, they don't have to carry guns.
Well, it's legal, though, in Minnesota. It's legal to carry a gun. You can do that.
What about in our country, in the UK?
Yeah, well, people shouldn't be doing that here. It's illegal here. But, Paul, do you think the kind of immigration enforcement that's happened over there should be repeated here?
Well, not so heavy, but you know, in a different way, you know. But we should have a force above our police force, you know, to actually, you know, to support the police force, basically, because our police force are rubbish. You know, they're not rubbish. They're not rubbish people. They're doing a good job, but it's rubbish against the situation that we're in now.
And
you know, all these protests.
When you hear, Paul, when you hear what the government's saying, like, we're going to change things, we're going to make immigration better, we're going to introduce all these different policies, are you convinced by any of it?
No.
Okay, all right. Well, listen, Paul, thanks very much. That's Paul in Hartlepool there, giving me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Brian says, regarding Andrew Mountbatten Windsor giving evidence in America, he could go to the American Embassy in London, which is American soil, to give his evidence. Another person says this lying Labour government have no intention of doing anything about migration. In fact, they're in favour of it. So I think this person would probably agree with Paul in Hartlepool there. I feel sorry for the people of Crowborough, but the nearer immigrants get near the leafy suburbs, the better chance there is that the government could actually be forced into doing something they don't want to do, says Derek. And Nick says, Peter, you've said in the past you've had mental health issues. How do you cope? You sit and talk about the decline of this country all the time. There's zero prospect of anything ever getting better. Nobody with the power to change things. Are we all doomed? How do you cope? Please advise. Nick, thank you for your concern, and thanks for your very kind message. The fact is that I actually get a lot of optimism and a lot of energy and a lot of positivity from the viewers and listeners, including you, actually, who get in touch and who say things that are really sensible. And were I to sit at home and not present these programmes, and were I to do a different job, I'm not sure I would have a full appreciation of the wisdom, of the positivity, the optimism, and actually the solutions, the actual ideas that people have. Not everybody has the answer. Of course we don't have the answer, but we work it out together on these programmes. And actually, it's an incredible privilege to present these programmes. I love my job, and I get a lot of energy and positivity from it. And actually, even when people are talking about difficult things, we give them a voice. And the worst thing is to not have a voice. The worst thing are these regimes like Iran, are these places with Islamic fundamentalism, places like Gaza, for example, where people don't have the freedom to express their views. You can say the government's rubbish. You can say the police aren't doing the right job. You can say, you know, difficult things that you can't say in these regimes. We have this freedom. And it's not perfect. This country is really, really not perfect. There are so many things we need to change, we need to fix about it. Absolutely. But the wisdom and the positivity and the ideas and the desire for a better country of so many of our viewers and listeners, that is what gives me incredible hope and optimism. So keep your calls coming in between now and 1 o'clock on 0344 499 1000. And thank you, as always, for listening, even if you've never picked up the phone, even if you've never sent me a text. There are loads of great people out there. I love the viewers and listeners of this programme. There's such wisdom there. We're going to talk about the policing element of all of this, of these protests on the streets. Mike Neville coming next. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lots of people getting in touch, including Jim Arbuthnot, who says, great show today, Peter. I must say, I respectfully suggest you're not right in thinking moderate Muslims are no problem. They won't stand up to fanatics because the latter are applying Islam more purely, and to resist is going against their prophet, in Jim's view. So thank you for that. And yeah, as long as you're respectful, that's fine. People are less respectful, and that's also okay. Thank you to everybody. Lots of love for Heidi Backram as well, who is on air. And the person says, did they miss Sadiq Khan condemning the pro-Iranian demonstration in London yesterday? I must have missed that. Lots of love for Heidi, as I say. Elle says, great interview with Peter. Heidi, well done. You're brave for the coverage you provided. Thank you for voicing what the majority feel. And another person saying, Starmer must have known all about Epstein and Mandelson when he appointed Mandelson. He says he didn't, of course, but so much more has been revealed as a result of all those files coming out. Tad says, morning Peter, so what happens to London streets if and when America rids us of the evil theocracy in Iran? Do we have internment camps big enough to house this trash that the loony left swoon over, says Tad. Nicholas Heath says, Peter, you don't like ICE because 2 troublemakers have died. Remind me how many people have died in the UK at the hands of illegal immigrants. Which number do you prefer? It's not that I don't like ICE necessarily. I don't think they're entirely good or entirely bad, but I do think that going around shooting peaceful protesters is not good. I don't think that's a controversial opinion. Arthur Braby says, excellent interview with a no-nonsense Jennifer Ewing. I want to talk to Mike Neville now, who's a former Metropolitan Police detective and one of our crime commentators on this station. Mike, it's great to talk to you. I just wonder, when you look at what has been happening, not just in the pro-Iran protests, but also an incredible bit of footage we'll perhaps see in a second, actually, of what Robert Jenrick and many other people have been talking about of crime in London. But maybe we could start, actually, with the pro-Iranian protests. Were they policed correctly yesterday, in your opinion?
Well, the police always have a difficult balance all the time, and we've got a situation in London where too many Jewish people are afraid to come to London on a Saturday. So as far as the policing goes, the police seem to be taking a more stricter hand now and dealing with people, and that seems to be better for me. So I think this will hopefully increase confidence in the Jewish community that they can come to London. But these protests, the other thing they do, of course, Peter, is they sap officers out of normal patrols. So the robbery you're going to show in Richmond, some of the officers could have been dragged up from Richmond to do these protests all over London, and therefore they're not policing the streets where we want them to be.
Well, let's see what happened in Richmond. This is in southwest London yesterday. I'll describe it for people who are listening on the radio. There's someone with a huge sledgehammer who is breaking into a shop there. This is 10:30 in the morning in Richmond in London, southwest London, taking a window, a sort of shatterproof glass away and breaking into what appears to be a jeweller's there. 2 men in masks, 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, as brazen as day, nicking all that stuff and lots of people, there's a shopkeeper there who's trying to stop them doing so ineffectively, and there are so many different people who have been tweeting about this and saying that it really shows what is going on in London. People like Robert Jenrick, for example. What's your impression of this and the fact that it happens with impunity, the shamelessness of what has gone on there, Mike?
It is shameless. You know, we've got used to sort of mass crime in really inner city areas. This is Richmond. This is like a nice sort of suburb on a Saturday morning.
It's the leafiest of leafy suburbs. It's a lovely place to live. If I could afford it, I would live in Richmond. Daylight robbery in London, says Robert Jenrick, who's of course now a Reform UK MP, and yet some of our politicians claim Britain isn't broken. It doesn't have to be this way. It is just a shocking piece of footage. Mike, go ahead,
yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, it absolutely is shocking. I think, you know, the mayor's been crowing that, you know, there's less murders in London, and well, that's a good thing. But most people, fortunately, do not witness murders, but they do see brazen shopkeeping incidents like this, people riding by on bikes and stealing mobile phones. Somebody even tried to grab my mobile phone. So people are feeling less and less safe. And there is some impact here. You know, mass immigration, bringing people in from countries that are violent, it has had an impact. And one of the stats I read recently in The Spectator was that in 1951, there were 152 robberies in the whole of London. Wow. In the whole year, there's 152. There are now 152 robberies every 2 days.
Wow.
And what's changed? The population has changed numerically from 8 to 9 million. So that's not the change. What has changed is the demographics. And we can't get away from these things. There's a real big problem. We're importing young men who we know little about. Who are these characters? We can't see their faces at all. But the facts are that we've allowed people to come to this country who are very violent. We've got enough bad people of our own without bringing any more in.
Yeah. Mike, just before you go, what happened to the scumbag who tried to get your phone? I would imagine he didn't get too far.
He missed it, actually. He missed my phone, but unfortunately, you come up, they sweep up from behind, you know, you're looking at train times. They nicked the guy next to me. They had his phone. And they're 200 yards down the road before you can tackle him on a bike. I unfortunately offered the guy some money and took him to the police station. But the real key thing was to try and get the guy home, because everything's in your phone, isn't it?
Of course.
It's those little things, I think, that really impact on people's lives and make them feel unsafe.
Certainly. Well, it's taking a phone is like taking a wallet these days, because it has so much information and bank details and all the rest of it. It's a horrible thing to happen to people. Mike, listen, thank you. That's Mike Neville there, former Metropolitan Police detective. Alison's in Halifax and has some thoughts on the person standing for council in Birmingham. This is a convicted terrorist. Alison, tell us your thoughts about this.
Well, exactly. Page 17, the Mail on Sunday. This guy is a convicted terrorist, not a suspected terrorist. Yeah. How is he allowed to stand for a council position when he's got that sort of a serious conviction?
And we've a terrorist standing for office in Northern Ireland. I mean, Martin McGuinness was a terrorist. He was the Deputy First Minister of the country. It sticks in the craw. It is horrendous. It shouldn't happen, and you know he shouldn't be allowed to do it, in my opinion.
This is all about Birmingham. Birmingham is very much the scene head at the minute, isn't it?
Lots is happening there. Certainly, we saw the Maccabi Tel Aviv aspect. We have the MP there, of course, who is a pro-Gaza MP. Alison.
I am not going to go down the Gaza route. I am actually. I think Israel is right. I am not a person. No, I think the Jews have got a bad deal in every which way, and they're getting really treated disgustingly in this country. I mean, really, Adolf would have been proud of how we treat the Jews in this country, wouldn't he?
Goodness me. Alison, listen, thanks for your views. Appreciate them. Sorry, have you another point to make there, Alison?
I just love listening to you and watching you. You do bring the new. But yes, how is this possible? I thought there's things you can't do in life. You can't even get a job if you have a criminal conviction. How are you allowed to stand as a councillor?
It's a very, very good point, and thanks for those kind words as well, Alison. Thanks for your loyalty to the programme. Peter's in Sussex and has some thoughts today. Peter, you're very welcome to the programme. Give us your thoughts. Go ahead.
Afternoon, Peter.
Hiya.
Just a couple of points, really, on the marches, you know, the Islamist marches. We see it, well, mainly online or on your programme and your other colleagues' programmes, but never on terrestrial TV like BBC, ITV, Sky, Channel 4. That is our problem. I know we got you know, many problems in this country, but that is our biggest problem. They spread misinformation, they hide proper facts. And I watched ITV last week for the first time for months, and my God, I thought, am I watching a different programme with what's going on in the world?
I
mean,
sometimes feel that way. I, as you can imagine, Peter, and you know, I watch all and listen to all sorts of things, Peter, and I do think that there is a real problem with just telling us what's happening.
But the way they're portraying Starmer is he's like the Messiah. Like he's come back from China as though he's got full of gold.
Peter, look at all the journalists who say it was a historic trip. It's not a historic trip at all. Another Prime Minister, Theresa May, was there 8 years ago. What's historic about another Prime Minister going? It's not historic at all. And yet we hear this kind of stuff all the time.
I think hopefully, God, Farage does get in, but he's not only got to face Labour and the lefties and the civil servants, but he's got to face the media. Yeah. And I've been saying this for years now, since COVID, when they attack Boris Johnson every day. You know, I'm not a great fan now of Boris, what we've learned, but they attacked him every day at these briefings. But Farage has got the blob, the media, and the media are the worst because they're, you know, you imagine the old Joe in the house watching TV who doesn't listen to your programme, unfortunately, or GB News. They're listening to all this propaganda rubbish, and they don't know what the truth is now because they've been fed all these lies.
Well, this is why we all must. First of all, Peter, thank you, and you know, this is why we all must question everything. Look at, you know, trust is so incredibly important. The people who watch and listen to this programme, you may not actively think it, but there's got to be some level of trust that I'm telling you what's actually happening. But there's so many things that I see, and it's not just about the BBC or Sky or whoever. It's so many different bits of information that we get on social media that you just got to question it all. You've just got to say, what's the motivation of the person who's posting this or reporting this? Are there other factors here? And you know, and just inform yourself, and that's what we try to do on this programme. Michael in Birmingham has given me a ring. Michael, I think you want to take issue with something that I've said. You're very welcome to do so. What would you like to say?
Peter, you've triggered me. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Don't apologise.
I normally love your programme, but you said about 10 minutes ago you don't want ICE, you know, shooting peaceful protesters.
Yes.
Let's get one thing straight. Those two in Minneapolis weren't singing Kumbaya. They weren't peaceful protesters at all. They were attacking the ICE agents, both of them. One with a car, the other went at them, and on a previous video, he went and booted the back out of their vehicle. So
I'm not excusing anything they're doing, Michael. I just don't want them to be shot dead. Why not taser them?
Well, fine, but why do they even go there in the first place? Right. I mean, if you're looking for sympathy for those two from me, you've come to the wrong person.
I don't. I have sympathy for their families, certainly, and
not even that for me. Sorry.
Okay.
Because I would like an ICE force here who's suitably tough, and in fact, I would volunteer a day a week of my time free of charge to actually help them, and I'm sure a lot of other people will. But they weren't peaceful protesters, Peter. They weren't standing there singing hymns and knitting daisy chains. Let's get that right.
Do you think Starmer should take inspiration from Trump in terms of how he has dealt with immigration far more effectively, in your view?
I think Starmer should take inspiration from anybody who's realised he's an idiot and just resigned from the job, because he won't take inspiration from Trump.
Okay.
So, you know. But thanks anyway, Peter. I think you're great, but not on that particular
do you know what, Michael? You know? Do you know what, Michael? It's okay to disagree. It's absolutely fine. And thank you for ringing and saying the nice things you've said, and also for disagreeing with me, because on my programme, we disagree without being disagreeable, and that was a perfect example from Michael in Birmingham, who's a regular caller and very, very welcome on this show anytime. Lots more calls, texts, tweets and voice notes coming up after the break. Stay with us.
welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Sinks, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Herbie is with us now. He's from Harrow and he has some views on everything we're talking about today. Maybe you do too. 03444991000 is the number to call. Herbie, you're very welcome to the programme. Good afternoon. What would you like to say? Oh, yeah.
Good afternoon, Peter. Come on, England. It's time to wake up. Can't you see what's happening? Think about the Crusades. What happened then? It's going back to those times again, I'm afraid, by the looks of it, Peter.
I think a lot of people feel the same way, Herbie. Maybe not quite the Crusades, certainly, but people have got to stand up for what's right. And we got to do that peacefully, of course. But when we have these kind of protests, do you think they can actually be contained in any way, or should they be banned? What do you think?
Well, the thing is that protest is one way of doing things. I've protested before peacefully. If they're done peacefully and you get the message over, fair enough. That's what it's all about, to try and get the message or to try and convert people to see the opposite of what you're thinking of or whatever. And it's just one of these things. If you ban everything, it becomes a state of control then, doesn't it, Peter? And we can't do anything.
I want people to be able to protest. I want them to do so peacefully. But these are not peaceful protests. Herbie, listen, thanks for your thoughts. I really appreciate them. Elisa in Chelmsford has been in touch with a voice note. This is what Elisa thinks.
Good morning, Peter. Thank you for covering this topic of the hate marches. Now, Douglas Murray predicted what's happening in our country many, many years ago, but unfortunately, those in authority put their fingers in their ears. There's no doubt in my mind that there's a concerted effort to enable the Islamification of our country. Jonathan Conricus said that this would be achieved by the ballot box. The marches encourage and indoctrinate the left and Islamists to stand for and vote for Islamists. We have to be really careful and very strong to stop this from happening. Our votes mean everything. We need a strong government who will create laws if necessary to stop this before it's too late. We know that Jews are the canary in the coal mine, and what starts with the Jews doesn't end with the Jews. We are now witnessing exactly this in Europe and the West.
Elisa, thank you for that. Lots of wisdom, lots of common sense in that, and we are, of course, the home of common sense here at Talk. Let's hear what Paul has to say in a voice note.
Good morning, Peter. The reason why we have a red-green alliance between Marxism on the left and Islamism is because there are now millions of Muslims in this country, and it is a strategic vote, block vote, in places like Birmingham, Leicester, Manchester. All our key cities, London, have all been basically looted. And I mean looted because they have gained power and they have looted Birmingham City Council, just like the Somalis have done in Minnesota. Paul Dixon, Hartlepool, MBA, postgrad chemical engineer.
Paul, thanks for your thoughts. I don't think there is a block vote to the same degree as I think you do. Certainly there's lots of evidence to show that not everybody from ethnic groups votes the same way, but certainly there are people in those communities, and including some of those communities that you're talking about in Birmingham, where people are told how to vote, and that is a cultural thing sometimes, and it's a horrendous cultural thing. People should think for themselves and vote how they want to vote. Mark's in Glasgow and has given me a ring on 03444991000. Mark, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter. Good morning. I do watch you quite a lot of the time, not just you, but the rest of your colleagues.
Great.
It seems quite apparent to me that what's going on, the two things that are required to create postpone a general election are being tested at the moment. Number one, we've already got them postponing for 1 year, then postponing for a second year, local elections. That's unheard of other than in wartime. We then have the government having to create a national crisis. And what's happening on our streets at the moment is pretty much heading there. And I'm watching our friends at the BBC. Even the weather apparently is a national crisis if we have a bit of rain.
The climate crisis. Mark, just before you go on, first of all, your points are great, and I want to hear all of them. But just when it comes to the local elections, I don't know if you saw that interview I did yesterday with that councillor who's resigning because she believes in democracy so much, and I just thought that was a really, really good thing. I disagree with her on basically everything else. But, I mean, how can they say, oh, we're going to fix this in a year, oh, it's another year? I think there'll be further postponements. I don't think they can reorganise local government the way they want to as quickly as they say they will. It's already, they said it would take a year, now they're saying it's going to take 2 years.
Well, Peter, I think the answer to that is in the same way that they have postponed and talked about having this paedophile rape crisis
Very good point.
investigation.
It's funny how when they need to do things quickly, they can do it quickly, but when it's really, really complicated and takes forever to set up a rape gangs inquiry, which, you know, you would imagine you could do that in 5 minutes.
Well, exactly so. I've not seen any progress towards reorganisation whatsoever. So this is going to be the story they're going to roll with and put off the local elections. In truth, what's happening, I believe, is Reform do need candidates with experience of being in local or national governmental jobs, so they understand how all the processes work. And there's no question about that. And I think what they're trying to do is stop those very able candidates from getting that experience and by putting off the local elections in as many places as they can, they achieve that.
So it could actually help Reform UK in some way?
No, not quite the opposite. By putting off the local elections, they're not allowing Reform candidates to take up those posts.
Sorry, I misunderstood your point there.
To gain the experience, yeah.
Okay, Mark, listen, thanks for your thoughts. I really appreciate that. Elma's in Wiltshire and our final caller of the day. Elma, you're very welcome. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Peter. What I wanted to say is I think we're all out on the street far more and we're bolder because the police does not do anything about it. I mean, I'm 87, and when I was a girl, we not only respected the police, we feared them because they would bang us up.
Yeah, and that has gone, hasn't it? That respect and that fear has gone, hasn't it?
And that's gone. And so people of all types of beliefs can get on the street and know they're not going to, nothing's going to happen to them. Yeah. Plus, I think the Islamic people, one of the things they hate about democratic countries like ours is the way we treat our women. They're free. They're so free, and that they hate. They absolutely cannot come to terms with that.
Yeah, well, Elma, I think you made some really good points there, and thank you for them. That's Elma in Wiltshire there, and certainly freedom for women is something we've got to fight for in this country, for Iran, for Gaza, right around the world. And there's so many people who say they care about human rights, they care about making sure that there are that people have human rights and freedom of religion and freedom of expression and so on, who are campaigning for the Iranian regime, which puts down men and women. Anybody who agrees with him, they don't like it. They don't like it, they repress it, they throw people in prison, they kill people, and there are protesters on the streets of this country, and what they are actually doing is protesting in favour of all of that. And there are lots of idiots who go with them, who think that they're talking about human rights and freedom and democracy, and they're not. If there's anybody within a country mile of me, of any protest I was on, not that I've been in many protests, but I've been in some, if there was anybody within a country mile of me who was advocating violence, who's advocating for people like Hamas terrorists, for example, who murdered and maimed and killed and kidnapped and burned people and raped women and used rape as a weapon of war, I would not be within a country mile of them. I would leave that protest immediately I found that out. But there are people, here we are, 2.5 years on, who are still going on those protests. It just defies explanation. I want to thank every single person who's contacted me today. I'm really sorry that I haven't got all your messages on air. I want to thank the top team